Let's see if this is working. Like you can't tell.
Like if you're live, do you want me to check YouTube?
I can check it, it's fine.
Okay.
Ooh. Okay, I think it's live, yeah.
All right, yeah. I guess wait people to pour in and stuff. I guess my audio is fine, right? The way it is right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's like a half a second delay, but
No, you're good. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna repost it on my Instagram and TikTok so that people can join. There's already people joining, but I think hello. Hi, Jen.
yeah, maximize.
Sorry guys, give me 1 second and we'll start. I just need to post it on my IG so people know I'm live. Oh. Okay. I have posted. Okay, hi chat. Raz, you should have posted about this before. I'm not gonna lie, I did it on a whim. I did post it though. I posted it. It's just I changed the link, so okay. Let's start with the video. I'm gonna mute it while we're watching, guys, and I'm here with Haji, one of my friends. If you're on my TikTok, you probably see him go live with me all the time. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can still hear him. Okay, let's watch.
Yeah, let's watch.
Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here today. I want you to just go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Kyla Turner, and I am a feminist.
Hi, my name is Anne. I'm a feminist.
I'm Bella. I'm a feminist.
I'm Ceci. I'm a feminist.
I'm Chelsea Gods. I'm a feminist.
I'm Matrix, and I'm anti-feminist.
I'm Jada, and I'm an anti-feminist.
I'm Savannah, and I'm anti-feminist.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maggie. I do not identify as a feminist.
Hi, I'm Carmen JC, and I am an anti-feminist.
Thank you, ladies. And the first prompt is, women have more privileges today than men. Okay, anyone who feels strongly can speak.
I think women in many ways have more privileges, but they also have more oppressions. And I think both of these things have to be weighed in when you're talking about like people's social power, right? It's really important to understand that women face significant oppressions, significant issues. And so while some of the privileges that we can identify...
Okay.
Holy fucking lag. First of all, okay, the lag is so bad.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Dude, I recognize all these people. That's Kayla, that's...
Kyla put up she agreed to the prompt. She said women have more privileges today than men. Wait. You said you can't hear the
That's
audio.
leftist blondie. Wait, that's only JS. Yeah, I can read the subtitles, so it's fine.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like low-key lagging.
By like courts tend to be more lenient to them, for example. If there's a situation, for example, of custody, women are going to be favored in that situation. They also have less choice with their bodies, right? They have issues where with hiring, if they try to negotiate, they'll be seen as caustic and negative because they're kind of our stereotypical presumptions of how women have to be. And these things impact women significantly. That's just why I would say they have less political power overall as well.
Well, just one of those things was not true in regards to custody decisions in this country. In fact, men are more likely to receive custody of their children if they ask for it. If men seek custody in a court in the United States of America, statistically, they are 90% likely to receive more custody or possibly even exactly what they were asking for. I would just say that women are not more likely to receive custody of children in court. Men are. Women just are the ones who more receive custody in court.
It's true. It's only 4% of men fight for custody of their children.
And when they do, it's successful 90% of the time. So that would tell me that court actually favors men. I understand that there's like kind of this anecdote that family court does in fact favor women. But
I want to say something. I don't know what they mean when they say women have more privileges today than men. Because, like, are we talking systemically? Are we talking socially? Like, in what respect are we talking about? Like, I would say today, because we're a lot more progressive, like, I would say a lot more marginalized groups or oppressed groups tend to have a lot more social power, in the sense that, like think of, like, cancel culture, for example. Like, if you want to cancel someone for being racist, misogynistic, sexist, whatever it may be, it's oftentimes pretty successful. But, like, if we're talking about systemically, I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, well, they brought up like custody and stuff, right? So I'm imagining they're probably talking about law. And I think that it's up to the judge in the case, just a discrepancy to the judge of whether they're going to give custody or not. I don't think there's a law that says like women deserve more custody or vice versa. I think it's mostly just whoever the caretaker is going to have like more advantage in swaying the jury's like opinion about, I guess, like the case. But I guess we'll see what they have to say about it.
it just so happens that women are more likely to want custody of their children. And that's where that mythology comes from.
I would disagree. You mentioned that men get custody when they ask for it, and that presumes that women don't have to ask for it. Why doesn't it begin equal and men not having to ask for custody if they are actually full parents?
I'm pretty sure, as far as I understand, like, both of the parents, like, if they want custody, you have to be the one to initiate that and kind of work for it. It's not about gender, it's not about whether or not you're a man or a woman. Likewise, if the mother wants custody, she's likely going to be the one initiating for it and fighting for it, and that's why they typically get more custody. Same thing applies with men, unless I'm misunderstanding how it works.
No, that's 100% accurate.
Just
Sure.
like the mom.
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's really important that we have a conversation that our laws are written by men. Our courts are ruled by men. So if you have some concern about what a court presumes, well, that's a conversation to have with men too. They're the ones who wrote the laws.
I saw you shaking your head.
I just know that my dad got custody of me because he asked for it. And it's a personal experience. It's not everything, but
sorry, go ahead.
I completely agree that like all of the laws that we have, we can vote now, but we're still in a system that was designed by men. So a lot of the issues that we have.
Sorry, I'm already pausing too much, but I just want to add on to this. It's quite literally the case that women are socialized to be the caretakers, right? So let's grant the hypothetical scenario that it is the case that women, even when men do fight for it and they do want it, women typically are the ones who are granted custody over their children. That's not because there's like some kind of systemic issue, right? Like Haji said, there's no law, there's nothing written on this, right? The reason why women are typically granted this is for two reasons. One, not only do the men, or the judges who are males and, women as well, the judges who are granting these things, not only are they biased because they've been socialized in a particular way, it's also the fact that women have been socialized to be the primary caretakers. What ends up happening when it comes to parenting is the father is not usually a primary caregiver, right? He ends up becoming a secondary caregiver. So when it comes to court and when they're both fighting for their children, it ends up being the case that the mother knows more about the child, knows more about the child's needs, she spends more time with them and so forth, and the father doesn't. So what that looks like to the judge is, the father isn't suitable to be a primary caretaker and therefore shouldn't have custody. So this is more so a social issue. And if that's something you want to reform, then you should encourage men to be just as involved as fathers as women are as mothers, right? That's not the fault of the government. But that's just my opinion.
that men have are because of decisions that they made.
But why would you start out assuming 50-50, like that both parents want the kid? Because in a lot of cases, like, men just aren't asking, so wouldn't you want to make the assumption that, like, the parent who pursues custody is the one who, one, feels empowered to, and two, wants to? Because I agree, like, there is a system set up where men probably don't feel empowered to ask for custody of their children, but I think that they should, first of all. But there is a problem, like, you can't just say, oh, it's fully the court system's fault. I think there is a culture that encourages young men to just say, oh, well, that's a woman's job. That's, not my job. Not, if the woman wants the kid, she can have the kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And
this is literally what I was just saying. Like, it's, if you socialize men to take the secondary or the more passive position within parenting, of course it is going to be the case that when it comes to, fighting for custody, you're not going to get your child. Like, that's just how it is. So if you want men to be able to get custody, you should encourage men to be in more involved caretaking roles, right? Rather than taking a secondary or passive role.
I don't know why a court would assume that a father just wants to be a father.
I was going to say, so wouldn't that culture that would put that on men be a result of feminism? Because men would probably prefer to have the women in their household. And also, women are the ones that are more likely to engage in divorce. So men want to stay with these women.
Engage in divorce?
Yeah.
Like start divorce, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
File.
Yeah, and men are the ones that actually stay because they want their family together. It is women that actually disrupt the family, and then they get upset with the results of a disrupted family.
Or they just want to keep the woman so that she's running the household. I don't know if it's necessarily I don't know. Men can't function as well without women as women can without a man. So I feel like when he hears divorce is on the table, it's going to disrupt his whole life a lot more. And I feel like that's really what they're thinking about.
So women do initiate.
Before Kyla gets into talking, I just find it really, really funny that rather than proposing a solution in which fathers are more responsible and more involved in parenting, right, because they aren't involved enough, and I think that's why we have a lot of issues. That's not to say all fathers are bad. There are plenty of fathers out there that are good, but a majority of fathers take that secondary or passive role rather than that primary role. So rather than her encouraging them to do that so that they can actually get custody of their children when it comes down to that, if it's the case that they're still not being accepted even when they are a primary caregiver, rather than encouraging that, she says, why doesn't the woman just stay? Probably because the woman is not in a happy marriage. She's in a loveless marriage. She's in a perhaps an abusive marriage. Perhaps her child is endangered, right? Like, there's so many reasons why women pursue divorce. And being unhappy is a valid reason, especially after you've tried to put in the effort to fix your relationship and your marriage. Most people don't just jump to divorce because they feel like it.
Divorce more. The issue is that they also initiate couples therapy. They also initiate seeking every single other alternative before divorce at basically the same rates as we see with divorce rates, right? So yes, women are divorcing. The issue is that, like, men accepting a loveless marriage with children who are miserable isn't like this thing that we should hold up and go, see, isn't this better? It's like, actually, all of this is unhealthy, right? It's unhealthy that men have been socialized in such a way that they don't think of themselves as fathers first, that they aren't asking for it, right? Whereas in this way, this is where women have been taught for both good and bad, that you are a mom, right? And I think we default to that, which is harmful to women. But we have to acknowledge that, like, women are seeking off-ramps in these relationships where divorce happens. And the same issues that they cite for divorce are happening over and over and over again. And this is a systemic issue. It's not just women want to get out of their marriages. It's that women won't tolerate a loveless, empty marriage, which is not even good for children.
So a loveless, empty marriage, how does the system contribute to what happens in your marriage?
Well, the way that we raise our boys, right, for example, is we teach them that your emotions are bad. So think about the way that we raise young boys. The most common way that young boys express their feelings is called externalizing. You see this in clinical data. The way that boys express their feelings, we teach them the only emotion you're allowed to have as a boy is anger. That's the only one allowed. But if you have anger, go to your room. Nobody wants to look at you or deal with you. And so what we've done is we've taught men that their feelings aren't okay, that if they have them, they're isolated and weak for having them. And so the only alternative for them is anger or anhedonia, a complete, like, emptiness and vacuousness. And so in this way, this is how society is contributing to this, because the presumptions we place onto our children that set a course and script for them that destroys their relationships. And men are reporting this. They're lonely, they have less friends, and their marriages don't work out. Men are saying this, not just women.
Really? Well, women do say it, you know, so I mean, I don't understand why it's always like the men, because the men aren't emotional, because the men aren't this. Like, the women are the ones that want to leave. So
But women want to leave, and maybe we should ask them why, because men are responsible for 90% of the violent crime in the U.S. Like, we always talk about women and what we should be doing. I really can't. I talk about feminism a lot, and I get so sick of it because I don't know why we're not talking about men. We're always focusing on women and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. What the f- is with men? They're responsible for 95% of domestic violence, 93% of sexual assaults and pedophilia, 88% of homicides, 85% of serial killings, 98% of mass shootings. Could I go on? 77% of assaults. They are responsible for so much, and then we sit here and want to make women feel bad for wanting to leave that man. I don't know why we always are focusing on women all the time.
Well, because their solution is always to leave. It's never to
Not
stay
always.
and figure
Sometimes
out.
they want to have therapy, and the man doesn't want to do
Yeah,
it.
therapy is
Oh, brother, here comes fucking Savannah, bro.
such BS because you go to a couples therapist and they say, oh yeah, you should leave your husband.
That's not
Wait, this is so ridiculous. Doesn't Savannah herself say she goes to couples therapy? I swear to God, I've seen a video of like Savannah talking about how her and her husband initially went into, what's it called? They went into their marriage looking for things like couples therapy, unless I'm like remembering incorrectly. So I don't know why she's such a grifter, bro.
That's true.
Yes, that is.
Have you
That
been
is
to couples
always
therapy?
the solution.
I
No,
haven't
and I
seen
will
Savannah
not go to
Okay, so you're just
couples
making
therapy.
What'd you say?
I said I've never seen like this person Savannah before, but that's interesting. That'd be hypocritical. if
You've
she said
never
if she
seen Savannah
actually
Stone?
happened. No, I don't know who that is.
Oh, she makes like crazy.
Assumptions.
Oops, she makes like crazy trad wife content.
Oh, okay.
I've heard so many stories. I see it. I've seen it online.
Yeah, if you have a marriage and couples counselor and they are just recommending divorce, which is not true. I've gone to marriage counseling and they didn't recommend divorce. If they're doing that off the hop, that would be unethical. You can actually report them for that. They're trained for more than this. A marriage counselor got trained to see marriages be happy. Right? The thing that they want is a fixed, rectified marriage. Sometimes that can't happen for a number of reasons. However, the idea that marriage counselors are just telling women to divorce their husbands is so far from any of the literature that reports on this, so far from the ethics. These people.
Yeah, this is just evidently a lie. Like, the whole purpose of like couples counseling and therapy is to help fix your relationship, not to encourage you to break up and degrade it even further. That's like the equivalent of saying like, oh, there's no point to going to therapy for your mental health or your depression because your therapist is just going to tell you to like off yourself and give you like bad coping mechanisms. Like, that's so untrue. Like, it's like antithetical to the whole point of what therapy is for.
People are trained on is basically taking an entire field of care workers and saying, you actually just want to destroy the thing that you care for, which is just, it's just not true.
Okay, I need to ask a question to both sides. So, ladies on this side, do you believe that the gender gap pay is still real?
No, it's not. That's been debunked so many times.
Okay.
People that don't think the gender
And
gap is
ladies
real
on the-
are like divorced from reality. Like, it is true that it's shrunk, so it's not 70 cents, 77 cents on the dollar. It's more like 90 cents on the dollar, but there's still a huge discrepancy. And the amount of studies that came out in favor of this is like so much data on this. I don't see how anybody can deny it. Like, I don't know, it's ridiculous, but we'll see what they say, I guess.
I think Kyla gets into this, and I think when people hear about the gender gap, like, I think the gender pay gap, sorry, they automatically assume that it is always about the fact that, for example, like, let's say both people are working at McDonald's, like, oh, the man's gonna be paid more. No. It's not like that. It's two issues. It's one, typically jobs tend to not hire like mothers, right? And they also tend to pay them less. And especially if we have more women in a particular field, or we have more mothers in a particular field, we also notice that they tend to get paid less as well. So it's not always like you see it's in every single job, but it's in like specifically female dominated fields and roles where, you know, women, like, they don't get hired when they're mothers, when they have children and so forth.
Yeah, and also, what's it called? Like, even if correcting for all the factors like hours worked and stuff like that, you cannot correct for like maternity leave, for example, right? That's very hard to correct for because when like a business is hiring a woman, they don't know if they're going to become a mother like sometime in their career, and therefore they're going to have to leave for, I guess, X amount of time, whether it's like 9 months to, I don't know how long maternity leave usually is, but during the course of the pregnancy and the early stages of the life of the child, there's a study named the John and Jennifer study where the only thing they changed was the name on the top of the application. And there's drastic, there's huge like deviations when it came to like the amount of salary they get initially for like an entry level job. There's also like lots of other studies, I don't know the name on the top of my head, that show that like for most jobs, there's only like one job out of like 500 jobs where women were making more than men on average after correcting for hours worked, after correcting for experience, after correcting for field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't have something on top of my head. Hopefully Kyla knows these and she can bring it up.
I
Yes,
think
we'll see.
I did watch a bit of this before watching it today. So I think I remember that she did get into it. But
This side, I'm sorry. I want to hear from you on this side.
I think it's real if you just look at statistics. A lot of people say like, oh, well, women are just choosing different jobs. And it's like we're raised to idealize different jobs. But even then, it's like women, if you have a child, you're now also working and you have a child, you're not going to work as much. So it's like that's to blame. The gender pay gap is huge. And the whole, I think it's like 75 cents on the dollar is just for white women. It's less for Hispanic women. It's less for black women. Like it changes. It's very real.
But you think that they're choosing like hospitality jobs because they were raised that way, or because women just naturally like those jobs
Well,
better?
like let's say like nursing.
oh my God, Savannah, she always makes this fucking argument. Oh my God, she actually makes me so mad. Savannah, you can't prove that naturally, that there's some kind of biological mechanism or some kind of neurological mechanism gearing women towards these particular roles. Because we are such social creatures, right? We're so heavily socialized, right? I hate when people try to, appeal to biological essentialism, and even sometimes I have done it as well, right? I like biological essentialism where it's relevant, but in these cases, it's not relevant. And I replied to a comment on my Ali Dawa video where I was talking about how, I think someone was saying like, well, there's an issue with saying that, libido isn't 100% biological, because then how do you reconcile, people who are LGBT or homosexual saying that, it's not a choice, right? Just because you're socialized in a particular way doesn't mean that it's a choice, right? It can still be ingrained into just how you've been nurtured, right? And so women have been nurtured in a particular way. Like, choices don't occur in a vacuum, right? Women have been nurtured in a particular way to the point where when they get older, they start to idealize certain behaviors, they start to idealize certain roles, certain degrees, and so forth. Like, these things aren't biological. And the reason why I say this is because it's for the very reason that, like, if you had a human being who grew up with, like, a pack of wolves or, like, a bunch of gorillas, they end up being socially identical to those wolves and those gorillas. They behave in identical ways, in spite of the fact that human beings might have different biological inclinations or instincts from that of wolves or gorillas, right? Because we're very, very social creatures, right? We like to mimic what's around us. We like to conform and so forth. So if you teach women that, the ideal of being a woman is, going into a job that like nursing or teaching or things that are very quote unquote nurturing, right? They're more likely to go into these roles. But anyways, I'm yapping. I don't know if I explained that well, but
Nursing used to be a male-only profession. They wouldn't let women work on women's bodies at all. Became more female-dominated, and now men don't even want to be in that profession, so then they lower the pay because it's a woman's job. Same thing with teaching. It used to be just a male-only job. We wouldn't let women teach. Women got into it, suddenly the pay drops for it.
Well, and not to mention, in addition to things like the
I
gender
never
pay
thought
gap.
about that. That's so interesting. That like how like before most it's not professors, but most like teachers were men. After now, when they became women, that the pay that they get is like less. I'm assuming after accounting for inflation. I never thought that's so interesting.
yeah. And
I want to look into that more.
Yeah, and it's also interesting when they're like, men aren't as nurturing, but like, like she said before, men used to predominantly be nurses. Like they made up the nursing field, they made up the teaching field, they made up a lot of these quote unquote nurturing roles that women make up today. And this isn't because, and that would contradict your biology. If you look 100 years prior, if it's the case that men aren't nurturing and it's actually women, then why was it the case that men were still succeeding in these fields and they were doing pretty decent at them, right? Like, they weren't horrible. Of course, they weren't, like, educated on women's anatomy and health as much as they were in comparison to men, because it was mostly men in these fields. But nonetheless, they did a pretty good job, and they were, like, it's just ridiculous. But Yeah, I also saw someone say that that more women go to uni now and suddenly degrees have less value. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
We also now see that women majority professions are being attacked education-wise, as the Trump administration just made it so that you can't consider nursing a professional degree. Audiology is no longer a professional degree. Yeah, and making it harder for you to get student loans because they've maxed out how much you can get in student loans. And all of these affect women
Wait, I'm not
more
gonna
than it
lie.
affects men.
What does a professional degree even mean? Like,
I'm
is it just
actually
the word
not familiar.
profession?
I think
Like, what does that matter?
I'm pretty sure it has like
Like a degree versus like,
designed to prepare. I'm pretty sure like you know, like how, for example, like a master's degree would change how much like you make per year. Like if you get hired by a company and you have like a master's degree in like business administration or something like that, they're more likely to pay you. I think
No.
it's also the same thing, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it should be like up to the company, like private companies to hire, like to value whatever they want. I don't see why the government can just, or like she said, Donald Trump. Maybe I'm understanding though. Maybe it's just like a prestige thing. Like, I don't know.
Someone said, why didn't you post this on TikTok? Because I can't go live from my Mac on TikTok, and I'm in my dorm right now, so I don't have my PC. But
Well, if you're a chiropractor, great job. That's still a professional degree because that's a job that most men would seek. But if you're going to be a nurse, well, that's a job most women would seek. Now you don't get to have a loan for the amount that you need. That's an example of a gender pay gap. That's an example of like what happens when you're taking opportunity away from women and women not making as much or being given as much in a loan or whatever.
Do you on this side feel that you can support women and not identify with the feminist movement?
Not if you like pants. My mom went to school. And until middle school, she had to wear a skirt every single day. That is one generation. That is my mother. If you're wearing pants, you get to wear those in public because people like my mother were part of the feminist movement.
I would respectfully disagree here, right? So like I worked in an addiction center. I was an addiction counselor formerly. It was for women. It was a Christian center, right? What you'll often see is that some of the most like dominant nonprofits for women are often religious in nature, and that tends to lean towards like the right side. Most of the people that I worked with didn't identify as feminists. They obviously helped women. I also obviously disagreed with them on a lot of stuff. I think that when women dislike feminism, it's because they have issues with specific feminists, or they, in my mind, have like some misinfo that they believe in, right? But like, of course, you can be like a person who cares about women and not identify as a label. I would just say, come to my side. Like, you probably do agree fundamentally with my presumptions about what feminism should be for.
yeah, I also agree with Kyla on this. A lot of people get mad at me for this, but I don't necessarily think you need to identify or attribute a label to yourself of like, you know, feminism in order to care about women's rights and care about women as a whole, right? Like me personally, I don't, like I've said this before, I don't necessarily call myself feminist, not because I have an objection to it. I would say if you put me on a show like this, which side am I going to lean more towards? I'd probably lean more towards feminist, right? But the reason I don't necessarily like attribute a label to myself is for two reasons. Like one, I just haven't read enough literature to the point where I feel confident to say, you know, I'm a feminist. Like it's the same thing when it comes to any other like philosophical position. I won't publicly subscribe to something unless I feel confident in it. And I feel like at least I've read enough literature. Like I don't have to be absolutely certain, but just enough literature to make me feel like I know the content well. And I'm also just like not an ideologue. Like I don't like to just like slap labels on myself. But second of all, the reason why I also wouldn't necessarily call myself a feminist is because I do have like some fundamental beliefs that would be contradictory to most feminists. Like for example, like Kyla mentioned, being religious to most feminists is contradictory, like in following feminism or labeling yourself as a feminist. So it's not just that. Like obviously I have a plethora of other positions that I don't want to get into today, but like I hold some positions here and there that I would say most feminists would disagree. Like for example, like I don't think patriarchy is inherently bad by virtue of it just being, you know, like patriarchy, you know, like the same way I don't think matriarchy would be inherently bad. It's just like a system, right? It's only inherently bad when it causes the devaluation of someone by gender, right? So if like patriarchy is inherently devaluing women, morally devaluing them, that's a problem. But if it's like if it's like how do I say this, like systemic inequality in the sense of like how, you know, a teacher has authority over a student, or how a boss has authority over an employee. I don't think that kind of systemic inequality is necessarily wrong unless it is involving the moral devaluation of women. And a lot of feminists would not agree with me on that, and they would have a problem with me saying that. But yeah, I don't think the system in itself is inherently immoral. But yeah.
And what it is.
Anyone have anything to say about that on this side?
As far as being a feminist and supporting women, I don't think the feminist movement supports women at all. I think it actually harms them. It's told us that sexual exploitation is empowering and that we should kill our offspring if it's an inconvenience to our life, and that marriage and family are not important anymore. I mean, it's completely destroyed everything that's been unique about womanhood.
So the alternative is like, let me get my ass beat, take my Xanax, and raise these
Yeah, I
kids
think
when
this
I
is
don't
like
want
the
to.
whole
Like,
thing, it's
what's the
equivocation on what feminism means, right? Obviously, there's like different ways and stuff. The idea that all people that are pro-feminist are now going to be like pro, like whatever, like I guess like OnlyFans, all that type of stuff is completely asinine. Like, I think if you ask like the majority of people that claim to be like feminists broadly, would have like probably the same opinion that me and you have on like OnlyFans work and stuff like that. So I think that's like a complete straw man of the feminist position, but
Yeah.
maybe they'll clarify what feminism they're talking about and stuff like that as I get deeper into the weeds. Hopefully.
I filmed a video on Savannah Stone, but like the file got messed up because my Mac is kind of fried. So I didn't end up posting it, but one thing I mentioned about Savannah Stone in the video was she oftentimes, when critiquing things like feminism, for example, tends to conflate the socio-political expression of feminism from the ideology itself, right? The philosophy of feminism in of itself, right? Like what feminism fundamentally is. And when it comes to feminism, just like many other philosophies, there's not necessarily just one opinion. There's varying opinions within it, right? Like, for example, when it comes to materialism, there's varying opinions amongst philosophers and how they believe materialism manifests, right, in the relations it has. And likewise, the same thing applies to feminism. We have, you know, liberal feminists, we have radical feminists, we have choice feminists, we have womanists, and so forth. We have, what is it called? Marxist feminists, right? And so she tends to conflate the socio-political expression, that is how it manifests within society, with how it actually is, and what the ideology is defined as, and how philosophers tend to, how do I say this, articulate feminism or define feminism. Like, and the reason I have an issue with this is like, it's the same reason I have with a lot of, oh my god, this is probably gonna upset some people, but it's the same reason I have an issue with like a lot of the critiques from like, you know, ex-Muslims or ex-Christians when it comes to their religion. And that's not to say all of them, just most of them, is that they tend to conflate the socio-political expression of a religion with critiquing the religion in of itself, right? So if I want to prove a religion is false, the same way she wants to prove feminism is false or problematic, the way that you do that is by critiquing scripture, not by, and critiquing the structure, the system, not the political and social expression of the religion. Like, if I want to critique Islam, you don't come and critique Afghanistan and how it's, you know, manifested within that country. You go to the scripture, you go to Quran, you go to Hadith, and you go to scholars, and then you philosophically critique that. That's how you prove something is false. And the same thing applies with feminism. The way that you critique feminism is not by going, oh, well, look at how feminists in America, like, they only just, like, they focus on the sexual revolution and sexual degeneracy and so forth. That's not representative of all feminists, because you're not critiquing the literature in itself or the philosophers, or yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, and also not to get I know like the whole choice feminism is kind of, I guess that's like a, like people may disagree on that, right? But I think most feminists hold to it's the choice for them to do certain actions that is inherently good, not the fact that they're in these industries doing this at a disproportionate rate. So I think that it's more like the quote unquote like the fact that we live in like a liberal democracy and that the government shouldn't cram down and tell women what to do. It's like the same thing for like abortion. Like abortion, getting an abortion is never a good thing, but it's the choice to have an abortion that is a good thing, right? We're not mandating that every single woman that has like X amount of like situation has to automatically get an abortion. We just say every single woman should have the opportunity to. They should have the liberty to, right? So I think it gets like a little bit more complicated, but broadly, that's why I think the main position is, yeah.
That's a very good point. I agree with you. Like the abortion thing, like, abortion in itself, like you said, isn't necessarily a morally good thing. It's never like a great thing to take the life of something, right? The same way it's not an amazing thing to take the life of a cow because you want to eat a steak. But there is some kind of contextual consideration that we have to have, right? Animals have instrumental value, or at least that's what I believe. And given our, current possible world, I believe that it's the case that they have instrumental value, and that is why it's morally okay for us to use them as food, right? And likewise, given, the current democratic structure that we have and the government that we have and what the Constitution states, people have personhood. They have a right over their bodies. They have a right to make choices. And that is why I believe it is morally good to give women the choice to an abortion, right? If you want to talk about like whether or not we should like the main conversation when it comes to abortion, if you want to talk about whether or not it's like moral in itself, that's a different conversation. But criminalization is typically what we tend to talk about when it comes to abortion, and that's because it's But anyways, I'm tangenting.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like I don't know if you remember a long time ago, like when we first met bus driver. Okay, I want to drop his name. But we met bus driver. We debated prostitution and legalization of it. And it turns out that actually in all the Nordic countries, so you're looking at Sweden, you're looking at Finland, you're looking at Norway, having it legal actually lowered the amount of prostitution that happened in those countries because of like the whole like black market thing and all like the different extraneous variables that will affect how much prostitution takes place. So like when we're talking about like feminism, you're talking about law, right? You're talking about law. It's not saying it ought to be like imperative for women to go in these industries. It's just saying by law, because having more liberty would lead to better outcomes, right? And by the way, this is like the argument that Kyla gave during her abortion debate versus Lila Rose. She said that in Canada they have way more lax abortion laws. There's actually like less abortions per capita than inside the United States. There's like mortality, death, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like what matters is the outcome, and if the outcome is better, well, you have more when you have like less laws are cramming down on specific individuals, then why not have those laws? It doesn't make any sense to be against it.
Yeah, agreed. And just like one more note, I'm gonna be pretty quick with this because I think they brought it up later from what I remember. But like you said, feminism is often concerning itself with legality, although it doesn't always have to, right? We can talk about moral consideration and so forth, and like what ought to be the case, and we can make normative arguments. But typically it's concerning itself with legality, and the reason being is because under the Constitution and under the like structure of our government and our legal institution, it is the case that the way that we evaluate moral consideration is based off of something like personhood and having intrinsic value. And when it comes to men, the reason why women were granted the same, rights as men is because philosophically, logically, men and women, there's no relevant feature that distinguishes them from having a right to something like personhood, right? Having intrinsic value. What makes men like worthy of being morally considered is no different from what makes women worthy of being morally considered. And that's why men and women ought to have equal rights. And if you believe that men and women have intrinsic rights, intrinsic value, both of them, then it ought to be the case that they both have personhood and they both ought to have the same opportunities and, bodily autonomy and so forth. Someone said, it's actually crazy though. I know someone who went to one of those countries and you literally see women selling themselves in windows. Yeah, I agree. That happens in some Eastern countries.
The alternative for women who aren't happy at home. Like, that's what I don't understand.
Women are pill popping more now than they were in the 50s. They're more depressed than they were. Yes.
Oh my God, no, they're not. I also hate when she makes this argument. Bro. Because it's like,
yes.
It's like, not only like, it's so logically fallacious, and one of the main fallacies that's wrong with this is you're appealing to a lack of evidence as evidence for something. So she's appealing to the lack of evidence of women being depressed in the 1900s and pill popping in the 1900s as evidence for the fact that they were more happy. However, the reason why we have less evidence is not only because it wasn't really something that we were researching, women didn't have visibility, we didn't really care whether or not they were happy, right? It's also the fact that, things like depression, autism, and so forth were not studied in depth, and we didn't understand it that well, and things like psychiatry and psychology and, seeing a therapist, these things also weren't as prevalent back then. So, of course, we're going to see less data reporting both men and women being happier, right? Like this is difficult for us to quantify because we've only recently developed the technology and the science to look at these things and not only like, evaluate them, but keep records of them, right?
Yeah.
And
And also
also,
it's funny.
sorry,
Wait, real quick. She only mentions that women are like quote unquote less depressed according to the stats that she's citing. Why'd you also say the same thing for men? Right? Like there's so many extraneous it might be technology that might make us like more like less happy. It might be because like the way society is ran, or it might be because like certain practices, like we stay inside more, we're socializing less, that's causing us to be less happy. The idea that she's going to say it's feminism without accounting for all the thousand like cajillion different variables that it could be is completely ridiculous. And also, like you said, like we don't know truly about like we don't have accurate data to how women were, I guess, like how much they're happy or not, right, back then as well.
yeah,
So
also
like
to
that
add
point.
on to that is she's completely disregarding the fact that we do have reports of women being unhappy. Like she's saying, oh, they were pill popping more. She's probably appealing to that. I mean, they're pill popping more now. She's probably appealing to that because she knows about something called the housewife syndrome, which there were like reports. Sorry, I can't speak. What's wrong with me? Reports back then of housewives taking drugs because they were so depressed, they were so isolated that they couldn't stand it and they resorted to drug usage. And I believe it was opioids and things of that nature. So this idea that housewives are happy, like it just makes no sense. Why would we have an entire movement? Why would we have like thousands, millions of women advocating for a particular movement, protesting and so forth, if it wasn't the case that they were unhappy? Like it's just ridiculous.
Yes, this is completely.
And men are women, yes, 2 times more likely to be on antidepressants than men. Men are 4 times more likely to kill themselves.
Why do you think that we're more likely to be on antidepressants?
Capitalism, the way the world is, the economy. I'll tell you right now, the economy controls the mood of a
Oh
country.
yeah, wait, can I say something
The
real
mood
quick?
of the country.
The depression stuff, right? Like the discrepancy between men's can I say I'll say self-unaliving just in case. Between men self-unaliving, women self-unaliving. I think like everybody knows this at this point. I don't know why she's still making that argument. It's because men usually use more like vicious means, I guess, to go about it. And also women are most likely to go get counseling or more likely to go get therapy and stuff like that. That's why there's discrepancy in those numbers, not because of feminism. So, yeah.
Also, yeah, someone made a good point in the comments. Yeah, and what even is happiness? Is there a metric to measure happiness? The happiness of a woman from the 1950s, who could tick very happy, but if she was here today relative to her experience, how do you know? Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, for example, if you go to Somalia or you go to Afghanistan, I'm sure there are mothers and there are women and there are children and so forth who would tick off very, very happy, and there's American women who would probably tick off, I'm not that happy, right? So we have to quantify, like, what is meant by happiness and how to, like, for some people, they genuinely are deluded. Like, it's a very subjective experience. So, like, for example, I could be abused my entire life, but because, and I think it's Plato, or it's Aristotle, I can't remember. I think it's Plato who talks about, yeah, I think it's Plato who talks about this in his work, and I'm going to talk about it in my video that I'm going to post soon about, like, men aren't wallets and women aren't prizes. But, for example, people who don't know what is good, they don't know the good life, they don't know what is better, they start off in a very, very, like, how do I say this? Shitty place, right? And they just go up and down this midline and this place of, suffering, right? And because they don't know anything better, something as small as, like, just like giving them a little bit more rights, right, makes them think, my life is really good, I'm really happy. Like, they're very delusional because they don't know anything better. When you don't know anything better than the suffering that you have endured, you believe that your life is amazing. So imagine, an Afghani woman, and I don't know too much about Afghanistan. I hate to use this example because, like, it's no different from, like, Westerners. Actually, you know what? I'll take Algerians because I'm Algerian. Like, I can speak on that. Like, take, for example, an Algerian woman who lived during the Civil War, right? And she was starving, she had no food to eat, she had no way to even clean herself, or even during the French War, right? And she was, victimized by French men. moving to a life where you're just a trad wife who bears children for her husband, maybe like if it's the case that you have a toxic, abusive husband, that's far better than being victimized by the French, by being abused, by starving, by having nothing to eat, and so forth. So they might, like, after getting out of that civil war, getting out of like the French war and so forth, if you go poll a woman like that, she's gonna say, I'm so happy. My life is so much better than what it was before. But if you go ask a woman in America, you know, they see a lot more women have visibility and so forth, so they're more likely to take something like I'm unhappy because I know how much more I could have and I can see that, right? Whereas women in Algeria during the Civil War and the French War, right, they didn't have that level of visibility. They didn't see other women. They didn't know that there was so much more out there for them.
Sucks because the economy,
Yeah, and also
capitalism
this
is
is like the viral like Tilly versus like Charlie Kirk thing. Is when Charlie Kirk said that women in the West are more depressed than like someone like Rwanda. And I know it doesn't map on exactly, but Tilly basically said, is there an index that smiles per capita that I'm not aware of? That's showing like the idea that first of all, like self-reporting is not always going to be accurate, and also that like there is no objective metric that we found to measure happiness that can be used in like every single society, because people value different things, people think that happiness is defined differently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I agree with the person in the comments that said it earlier, like
Yeah,
the
it
other
would
two.
take an insane level of rigorous control variables, right? Like rigorous defining of what it means to be happy and rigorous control of the participants and ensuring they understand what happiness is defined as, right? It's not just your experience, but what people typically mean when they say happiness is quality of life, right? And they don't realize that's what they're referring to. They're not usually referring to the subjective feeling, because if that's what we're referring to, that's far, far harder to quantify and apply to everyone else. What we're usually referring to is something like quality of life, which would thereby like probably improve your mental health and so forth, and your subjective experience, right? And so like that would take rigorous control of those variables. You would have to explain to these women, for example, in like third world countries who are currently like dealing with war and so forth and famine, that this is what happiness looks like. This is what you could have access to, even though you've never seen it, even though you've never experienced it. This is what happiness looks like. Do you think you are happy? And that's so hard to do, right? So like this, I hate when people appeal to this. It's a very subjective thing. It's not something we can apply universally.
Yeah, it's also like very contradictory, because most people intuitively think it's just standard of living. Obviously, the West has a higher standard of living, yet they self-unalive way more than people in poorer countries, right? So are they less happy or more happy? Like, how does it work? So I feel like, yeah, it just depends on who you define it, and also you need to universalize that definition of happiness, which obviously from culture to culture people might disagree. So yeah,
the
we'll see what
actual
the
enemy here,
person
not
says.
feminism. Feminism was just a human rights movement like the civil rights movement. Black people should have equal rights. What's the difference between a woman and a black person? It's just a matter of, no, you want equal rights as a human because you should have them. I should have them too, right? It was just a human rights movement. It was focused on the gender, and then we focused on the race, and we all came up. I don't know why everyone can't come up together.
Yeah, I feel like there's a huge misnomer on what feminism is. Feminism is not me telling you to go abort your firstborn son. I don't care what you do with your body. Feminism is you have the opportunity to do what you want because of, you have a bank card because of feminism, you get to wear
exactly
pants
what we were
because of
saying before,
feminism, you get to have a job because of feminism, you get to get out of the house if you want to because of feminism. This is not about like trying to control your life. There is more room for people who are anti-feminists in the world of feminists than there is for people like me in your world. I don't care if a person wants to go have children their whole life and that's what they want to do. Most of my friends are stay-at-home moms. Many of my extreme
Yeah, I agree with this. Like, the whole point, like, and as we, like Haji just said, like we were talking about earlier, that's literally what we were trying to emphasize, is feminism isn't telling you you can't have children and stay at home. No. And even I wouldn't say that. I can't tell you you can't do that, and I would force you from not doing that, because you have a right to do that. You have personhood. You have the right to choose what you want for yourself, even if those choices are made, contingent upon how you've been raised and socialized and so forth. I can't force you to do anything, right? Though I do believe it ought to be the case that that women and men should how do I say this? Prioritize higher goals, right? And I think that just being a parent, whether you're a man or a woman, just being a family man, being a wife, I don't think these are very high goals. They're very valuable things. I won't deny that. You know, family, community, children, they add so much to your life. They add substance to your life. They're very important things, but they're not the good life. They're not the only thing in a good life, right? There's so much more, and you should prioritize higher things for yourself. And so I would say a woman ought to pursue better things. But I can't stop you from doing that.
Yeah, I think it gets a little bit more complicated. I think it's like a little bit like liberalism versus like modern day conservatism. Being being conservatives is like, are you gonna prioritize like the country as a whole or like individual rights? Because as a country as a whole, having like a nuclear family and like having like two parents in the household to have like two, three children and making sure that people are having enough children. Because right now, I'm pretty sure the fertility rate of the United States is below what we need to like continue as a country like doing well. So if you take it from a like the country as a whole perspective, I get they can kind of have an argument how feminism is a detriment to it. Again, like depending on the empirics, I disagree sometimes, but broadly, sure. But when it comes to individual level, individuals should have the right to do whatever they want. They shouldn't be forced to like have children just because it'll make society better. So I guess it depends if you're talking from the perspective of the country or of like individuals. And I think it's a little bit more complicated, but yeah. That's at least.
Liberal friends are stay-at-home mothers, and do you think I denigrate their decision to sacrifice their life for their children? Absolutely not. I'm a mother myself, but I also want to have the opportunity to work if I want to, because for me, that's where I find happiness. There is space for you in our movement, but there is no space for us in yours. We're inclusive. Feminism is not telling you what to do with your life.
Yeah, you
Feminism
can have
is
a baby,
letting
you can get married, do
what
whatever
you
you
want
want
with your life.
Sorry. I agree, though. I agree. Do whatever you want with your life.
Feminism is letting you do what you want with your life. And I don't want to tell you not to get married when you're 19 and pop out 7 kids if that's a thing that's going to be happy for you. But I want to offer people the opportunity that they can also do something else if that's what makes them happy.
So I did get a sense that someone on this side felt like
this part is so
this
funny.
Side was feeling or was speaking in a way that felt racist. Can you speak to that?
So when you said something about the difference between women and black people.
As far as human rights.
Can I speak, or are you going to keep cutting me off?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, thank you.
Not very feminine.
That's like one of my main issues with feminism is like even Susan B. Anthony, like she compared white women to the black man, and she felt a way that black men got the right to vote before white women. And that's like also something that I don't agree with, because white women think they're superior to black men, you know? Why do you need the right to vote before our men? That's the question I would ask.
I'm saying everyone should have it at the same time.
But why do you have to
about when it happened?
Yeah, she's like, I'm gonna keep playing it and then I'll like give my thoughts after, but she's like mischaracterizing one woman's opinion at that time, like 100 years ago or however long ago, and attributing it to this woman in the room who's not saying that. Like, that's not her point.
I'm saying everyone is a human.
It was just,
doesn't matter your race or your gender.
This is the thing,
I feel like you should be able to live your life the way you want. That's the feminist movement.
But why did you have to bring up black people? That's what I'm trying to say.
It's a human
because you're
rights
performative.
movement. I'm comparing.
Because you're performative, babe.
Okay, I'm comparing human rights movements. Black people exist. Women exist.
You don't have to speak
I think
on
both
it.
of them
Don't speak on it.
Why? It's a human rights movement. That's what we're talking about.
It's not productive. I'm telling you, I don't like it.
It's not productive to talk about human rights movement and compare the two when they're just about equalizing things for people so that we can all come up together.
I'm letting you know that it's offensive. I'm telling you that it's offensive.
Okay, I will say this. I definitely understand how black people feel constantly being like the reference point for any like civil rights issue, right? Or like any like, you know, if any group is being oppressed, it's always like comparing it to black people, right? But the reason why people do that is because within America, like slavery and the atrocities that were committed against black Americans are one of the worst within American history. Like, I think it takes the cake, at least within America, right? And it's very similar to how Europeans, whenever they're trying to, you know, like make a comparison to something, they often appeal to, you know, like look at the Holocaust, look at what happened to Jewish people, right? When we talk about civil rights movements to kind of help people understand who are not within the same group, right? Like the severity of what you experienced, or to help just people understand what you're trying to articulate better, we try to draw analogies between similar groups or similar experiences. That's not to say that they're the exact same, that, you know, like that the suffering is the exact same. No, but like there's analogies to be drawn. But nonetheless, I understand why it's annoying. Like sometimes I even catch myself doing it whenever I'm trying to like talk about, you know, issues within Palestine or like when it comes to ICE and so forth, and I have to kind of like hold myself back. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a name for that though. There's like like the longer a conversation goes on during a debate, the more likely either the H cost, like the Shoah, or like slavery is going to be mentioned. That's not because they're trying to get a dig at the people that were victims of those atrocities. It's because those are the most studied events in all of Western history, at least. Because number one, it was pretty recent, where the H cost was like 70 years ago, right? And after like slavery was like 300 years ago. It's super, super recent. And also, it's just widely studied. That's why it's always brought up. And also, like, comparisons are not always like a one-to-one comparison. I think people like misconstrue this. They think every single comparison means that like everything on both sides is the same. If I say I like walking on the beach as much as I like walking in the forest, the beach and the forest are very different things, right? The beach is like sand and water. The forest is like dirt and like trees, I guess. But that's not what you're not comparing the locations, you're comparing your joy in being in those locations. So they're comparing the logic of like why would certain classes like gender not have equal rights, but race would have equal rights, for example. And also, when she said like the timeline that that white women got the rights before black men, that's just because the civil rights movement and the feminist movement started at different times. That's the only reason why that's the case. I don't really know why she brought that up as like a rebuttal to that, but
I
yeah,
think
it's
she
all
was
right.
I think she was trying to say that at that time when and you're correct, like white women at that time. Sorry if you guys can hear something in the background. I think they're doing like construction on my campus. But anyways, like at the time, what was I gonna say? I literally forgot because of the noise in the background.
Like the timeline between.
Oh yeah. Because the civil rights movement happened later, right? So people at that time not only weren't aware of like the atrocities that were being committed or like the inequalities that black Americans were experiencing, at least to the extent that they should have been like consciously aware of it, but like it also just wasn't a concern raised. So racism was likely far more prevalent. It wasn't an issue that they were addressing at the time. So of course a white woman was going to be like, why would you, like, the white woman at that time would have been like, why are you giving black men rights over us? Because they're racist, right? Like they haven't gone out of that mindset. They're not learning to like undo it and so forth and do the work to move past that. They're still within that space, that and that systemic inequality, and they believe in those things. I don't know how that's
Yeah,
a representation of feminism as a whole.
yeah, and also because like females are 50% of the population, black people, at least now, they're like 13, 14%. So the probability of entire group to mobilize, if it's 50% of the country, it's going to be way more plausible than like 13 or 14% mobilizing in order to get rights. So like, yeah, of course feminism is going to happen prior to what it was like 1920s, right? Versus like the 1965, I guess, when Civil Rights Act passed. So yeah, like that makes sense because there's more women than black people inside the United States. Like, then okay, yeah.
By the way, guys, Haji is black, so if I say anything offensive, I'm just counting on the fact that he's gonna tell me something. Okay, so that's all I have to say.
Well, you have not said
It's
anything
offensive
offensive
for me
ever.
to
Yeah, okay.
say
Yeah.
that women should have the same rights as black people.
Yep, it is.
It's offensive for me to say that all humans should have the same rights as everyone. That we should
That's
all
not
have the
what
same
you
rights.
said. There's a difference between everyone
Literally
and black
right now,
people.
I'm saying everyone. I don't give. Sorry, what your skin color is, what's between your legs. I don't care about any of that. I want everyone to be able to make the decisions they want for themselves and have the same rights. I don't want you to have any less rights than me. I don't want this guy to have any less rights than me or more. Everyone should be even. That's fucked up for me to say.
Okay,
Could I
good.
just ask, I'm just curious what's racist about the statement that I want women to have the same rights as black people? I'm just, because you said that's racist. I'm just curious what's
Well,
racist
because
about
first of all, you guys classify women as second sex, right? You guys think women, this comes from the feminist movement. We look at women and we say, oh, we're treated as second-class citizens, we're treated less than men. And so it's a little bit dehumanizing to say, for one, you want to fight for women to have better rights, and then to look at black people, which isn't just black women, that's black men, our men, that we need to be, we expect our men to be strong,
Kyla's face is fucking killing me.
and for you to say,
Dude,
oh, well, women
there's a
deserve.
genius word that solves all of this. It's called intersectionality. Like I don't know if she just hasn't heard of that. She hasn't read Kimberly Crenshaw, but that's a thing, right? Like the idea that you can only be oppressed in one way, and that like the hierarchy is only going to be either only gender or only race. Like it's not the case. Like you can be oppressed in like many different ways. You can be oppressed socially, economically. You can be oppressed racially. You can be oppressed. What's it called? Based off of your gender, and like all these different things. Like I don't really know what her argument is.
I
So,
have a lot
I don't
to
know.
say
Maybe
on
she
this.
should. Yeah.
You know, you're right, but like I have a lot to say on this, but I'm not gonna get into it because I want you guys to see how she has like no justification for this.
Deserve the same rights. Black people should get the same rights as women. There's this culture in Black culture where our men are constantly emasculated, right? So I'm very, very like, I mean, my husband's a Black man, so I'm very intentional about how we speak about our Black men, and I don't like that.
I wasn't talking about just Black men.
But you need to be mindful, okay? Since you're a liberal and that's what y'all are about, you need to be mindful.
I
And
didn't
that's
say
it.
anything racist.
That's it.
I didn't say anything like that at all. You're
But
trying
you
to
did.
misconstrue. Now you
not
are
mis-
getting my twisted.
Thank you for, did she answer your question about what offended her?
I feel like and I'm not trying to be.
I know you're trying to actually understand
I genuinely
which
understand.
part of the conversation offended her, and I
You
think
didn't, it wasn't you. She said something.
No. I understand it wasn't me. I'm trying to understand. You said the statement, I want women to have the same rights as Black people. I'm trying to understand what's racist about that.
I think
Because you wouldn't say that about a white man. When
it's the men part, I think, that got added to.
You don't have to say women and Black people and then not speak on.
I think the point here is that white men tend to be one of the least oppressed and marginalized groups of people, at least within America, in comparison to, you know, Black groups or, you know, I don't even think she said Black men. I'm pretty sure she just said Black people, but I don't remember. But waiting for the logic. Yeah, okay, let's keep watching. It's almost done.
Like what about the Black men? You know what I mean? Like I don't understand why you do that. Can someone speak to this? Like am I crazy?
Did anyone else, did any other ladies on the side feel that same way about that statement?
I think she's just kind of referring to like women should have the same rights as everybody. Why do you have to single out Black
I don't know why it's lagging so bad. I'm sorry, guys.
people or Black men?
The reason I see
Black men
not
have
men.
the same rights as everybody right now, and women have the same rights as everyone. We're equal right now. So how far do feminism have to go before you guys see that we're equal?
But you want to, I'm not talking about you guys, because I don't know where you stand as far as anti-feminism, but there are people that are actively working to take our rights away, so that we are backsliding into time. That's why I'm here.
As far as like, what, abortion?
That's
Wait, do you want to wait more? Can I say something? Real quick?
Yeah,
No, you can say something. I'm waiting to say my part. You can go say whatever you want.
Yeah, so she basically saying like systematically, because the Equal Pay Act was passed in 1963, so Rights Act has passed, and like I guess genders protected class, so it's illegal for any businesses to discriminate against people. First of all, people break the law all the time, right? So like for example, unaliving another person's like it's like illegal, but it still happens. That's number one. Number two, that's the difference between systematic and systemic like oppression. Systematic means that there's like in Israel, there's a law. Jews get this, Arabs get this, right? That's systematic. There's also systemic where it's not implicit in the law. It doesn't say one class gets this thing, another class gets this thing, but it disproportionately affects specific communities, right? So if you're going to revoke abortion rights, it's not saying, oh, if you're a woman and you're going to get abortion, it's illegal, but only women get abortion. So of course it's only like affecting that sex. So that's systemic racism versus like systematic racism, or sorry, like oppression. So I think like that's kind of confused there. Just because the law says everything's equal, that doesn't mean like everything's equal, right? I think it's kind of like a misnomer that people tend to bring up. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
getting rid of the women's right to vote.
The 19th is never going to be repealed. I think people are trolling.
Never say.
I think people are trolling, but she literally talks about women shouldn't have the right to vote. Okay, bro.
Never. But she's right. I meant everyone should have the same rights. And I only brought up Black people because of the civil rights movement happening around the same time. These were human rights movements. We all tried to come up together, which I love, and I think we all should have the same rights. I don't think that's a...
Yeah, I don't think you
now.
had ill intent. I don't think you had ill intent. I'm just like, we need to be careful about how we speak when we're bringing in Black people, because we're always constantly attaching every civil rights kind of movement to Black identity. Like we're always the LGBT, everything. It's always connected to Black people. And so I'm just like, no. That's what I'm saying is no.
It's kind of like, and before I get into what I want to say, and I'm going to yap for a minute, guys. And I'm not sure if I'm going to articulate it well, so hopefully if I'm not articulating anything well, Haji can maybe articulate it better for me. But before I get into what I want to say, it's kind of similar to how the Holocaust is like basically our poster example for genocide, right? When we talk about Palestine, when we talk about Sudan, when we talk about any of these countries experiencing genocide at the moment right now, we oftentimes compare it to what? The Holocaust. And that's not to degrade what happened to them, it's not to belittle them, it's just because it was so severe. And in these moments, like for example, in the Holocaust or during the Civil Rights Movement or in freeing black slaves in America, these were such pivotal moments in history that we founded new terms, we founded new theories and constructs and models and so forth to understand these social constructions that resulted in the harm, the suffering, and the oppression of these groups of people, right? We want to understand it as best as possible, and that those issues and like, you know, like how pivotal they were, they gave rise to a lot of literature, a lot of information. Like they're not just pivotal in terms of like freeing these people, they're pivotal socially in that they change our perspective on these things, right? Where previously people saw Jewish people as like inherently evil, the Holocaust and everyone realizing how horrible it was a pivotal moment in us understanding genocide and how evil it was, right? And the same thing applies to, you know, black slavery and like the oppression that they experienced and so forth. But to what I was going to say, I kind of wanted to defend Kyla and the girl with the pink hair, I forgot what her name was. I wanted to give perspective on their position. The reason why people often compare these things and why she's saying women should have the same rights as, you know, black Americans, there's no difference. The reason why she's saying this is because it's intuitive, right? Most people will believe, unless you're insane, right? Most people believe that black people ought to have the same equal rights as white Americans, right? We're at a place in history where we universally agree upon this, right? It's intuitive. So if you intuitively believe that black people ought to have the same rights as white people, and race is not a determinant of your moral status, your moral consideration, or whether or not you have personhood, then the same thing should apply to gender. Because when it came to race, the way in which we philosophically determined that there's no distinction between, you know, a white person and a black person in terms of who should have rights and personhood and so forth, is because when we looked at what we were granting white men, right, and why we were granting it to them, the relevant features of white men was no different from that of black men. Race was not relevant to determining moral consideration, and it should not be relevant to determining moral consideration, because what is relevant to giving someone personhood, to considering them to have intrinsic value, is not race. It's not gender either, right? And so if it's not gender as well, and you also agree that it's not race, right, then you should be consistent, and you should say that women ought to also have the same intrinsic value and the same personhood as men. And so that's what she's trying to argue implicitly, although she didn't really articulate it that well, and it sounds a bit messy. That is what she's trying to say, is the same way that you believe black people ought to have the same rights as white men, I believe that women ought to have the same rights as men. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, exactly. The principle is the same, not necessarily the history behind it, but the principle. And also, what's the quote? Like, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. So, of course, you're going to cite historical examples, like obviously, right? So, you're saying like the principle applied here. So, why wouldn't it apply there? It's the exact same. It's not the exact same, but it's the same principle that's applied in both cases.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, and I'm talking again, I talk about this in my recent video that I'm going to upload. You guys are going to fuck with it so hard. It's based off of my Substack article, so some of you have probably read it already, but a lot of people didn't want to read it. But it's the reason why, for example, like I said, we came to the conclusion that white people are equal to black people is because, again, we understand it's not a relevant feature when we're considering intrinsic value, when we're considering personhood, right? When we're considering moral value. And that means that what we consider when it comes to personhood and what we consider when it comes to moral value, especially within our government and our legal system, right, is we consider whether or not someone is human. So if someone is something is subhuman, that is, they are less than a human, like for example, we consider animals to be subhuman, then we grant them less rights, we don't grant them personhood, and we grant them less moral value. That's not to say that they don't have any moral value or consideration at all. They do have moral value and consideration, it's just less than that of a human being, right? And we don't believe that black people should have less moral value or consideration than white people because they are not, how do I say this? What was I saying before? Oh, they are not subhuman, right? They're not subhuman. They're just black and they're white, right? Same thing applies to men and women. women are not subhuman to men. We are both human. The relevant features that we are evaluating when it comes to morality, when it comes to personhood, when it comes to rights, is human. I just choked. Is humanity. My throat is dry. Is humanity in itself, right? So if that's what we are evaluating, then we must extend that. In order to be consistent, we must extend that to women as well. But I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. But I also talked about this. It's not relevant to this kind of, but like it is kind of relevant. Is that the anti-feminists will probably argue that women are biologically programmed in a certain way and so forth, and they're stylized in a certain way. Like in order to be feminine, you shouldn't do X, Y, Z, and therefore we should put these things into law. I talk about this in my video. I don't think that there's such thing like genuinely as like a high value woman or femininity or a high value man and masculinity. I don't think these things actually exist. What we typically mean when we're talking about a high value woman or a high value man or femininity or masculinity is we're not saying that men or women are subhuman, right? We're not saying that, you know, they're less than, but what we typically refer to is stylized forms of expression, right? And these are typically associated with things that women do or that men do. And so what we usually mean when we talk about masculinity or femininity or being high value or being a high value woman or man is we're referring to being sub-man or sub-woman, right? We're talking about the expression of these characteristics in a stylized and aesthetic form. We're not saying that they are intrinsically less than or they have less intrinsic moral value. By the way, Haji, did that make sense? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Based.
No, I don't think that you were trying to be like evil about it, but I'm just saying be careful because y'all have a tendency to always group black people into every single thing, and it's just not always the time to speak on it.
I have noticed that feminists and myself.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Oh, could you hear me swishing the water in my mouth?
Yes, bro.
What the fuck? I thought I muted.
No, good ASMR. Okay.
Can you still hear it?
Oh wait, it's only me because I'm on Google Meets. Wait, is that why? I don't know if the chat can hear. I can hear it.
Chat, can you guys hear me swishing water in my mouth? Because I've been doing that this whole time. That's embarrassing if you can.
Included in this tend to get uncomfortable with conversations about race. We don't know how to talk about race very well. And even just this whole debacle that just happened was just kind of like affirming of that, of like, we need to get better at it.
Dude, the person named JS got canceled for being racist, by the way. The person that was just talking. That's besides the point. Like, I think it's fine. It's just drama, but interesting. Yeah, I don't know, I want to speak about it, but yeah.
Bring it up.
Hi, loves. It's me again, Dr. Michelle Daff. We've really...
Yeah, you're not getting a free promo.
As much as they have blessed me. The next prompt is, no career will give women as much joy and fulfillment as raising children.
I agree. Wait, I actually agree with the prompts, though. Do you?
Oh, maybe someone who has...
I think Kyla agrees with this just from what I've seen her say before. But, I agree with it, but I don't like the way that it's framed. I think the way that the prompt should be framed is no career will give any person as much joy and fulfillment as like building a family, right? I think having children, I think building a family is one of the most emotionally fulfilling things you can do in your life, right? Like I said before, we're social creatures, right? We love to have community. We love to have people around us. We need these things. And especially when it comes to like not only being raised by amazing parents, but also passing that forward and being a good parent so that you can raise good children as well. These things are very fulfilling to us within life. And I think for both men and women, this will give them as much joy and fulfillment. Like nothing else will give them as much joy and like fundamental internal fulfillment as building a family, getting married, and having children. And I don't like to say like specifically having children because not everyone can have children, right? So we can fulfill this internal need by community, right? So like this is why, and I think Kyla also talks about this as well, this is why villages are so important. So take for example in Eastern countries, even though they have horrible lives in a lot of these war-torn countries, the reason why they're happier is because they have villages, and that is they have community, right? So they have people to depend on, they they have a sense of belonging. This is what we need psychologically. And I think that's what's most important. And you can build that sense of belonging in any sense, whether that be by getting married, by building very, very close friendships, by staying in proximity to your family even after you get married, or it can be building, having children yourself, or by adopting someone, or by being a teacher, right? These things are essential to building community and building belonging, and that is what gives us internal fulfillment. So that's why I say I wouldn't say children, but I would just say some sense of belonging and some sense of family.
Yeah, for me, like, I don't know, like, obviously I don't have any anecdotal evidence. I'm only 22, haven't had a child yet. I don't have a haven't been like the parents of like a family before. But for me, like, if you look at people on a tombstone, right, it doesn't say like great pharmacist. It says great mother, great sister, great grandmother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also, when you're on your deathbed and you're speaking your last words, you're not saying, "Oh, I wish I could have finished that one scientific project." Maybe if you're like some philosopher, maybe, right? But broadly, you say like, "Oh, I wish I spent more time with my dad. I wish I spent more time with my mom. I wish I spent more time with my children, et cetera, et cetera." So just because of that fact, I think that the prompt is like true. Like I affirm the prompt. But yeah, I think it's like fulfillment. Like technically, everybody has like different lives. They value different things, so it can be different. But I think I seeing that one thing to be similar between all cultures and all societies is that on the deathbed and also like what they put on their tombstone. But I don't know if there's any like empirical way to like measure that. Obviously,
I agree with you. Most people,
and also like evolutionarily also makes sense as well, right? Because like what in evolution, what you want to do, you want to survive long enough so you can reproduce, and if you have like a strong community and stuff like that, then that community is more likely to like last and have and propel like the human species. So
like I said, the only thing I would disagree with in this particular prompt is the children part. Because like I said, psychologically, like we look at like Maslow's hierarchy and so forth, when we look at like what gives people that internal sense of fulfillment is primarily belonging, and that doesn't have to be built through a family, right? It doesn't have to be built through children, because as we know, not everyone can have children. We can find that belonging in other ways. So I just disagree with the prompt on that basis. If they were to change the question or change the prompt to "no career will give women as much fulfillment as like community or belonging," I would agree with that. I just don't like the framing of it, because then the reason why people typically say this is because they like try to frame women as like nurturers, right? And therefore, by virtue of them being a nurturer, that is what's going to make them happier, and that they ought to do that. And I just don't agree with that. I think men are also capable of being nurturers, and I think it's evident. Like a lot of men prioritize family, they prioritize community, they prioritize bonds. And this is important to them as well. So I think it's just persons in general. It's not, and this is why I say, by the way, like what fundamentally makes, and I said this earlier and I'm going to say it in my video, but what fundamentally makes someone a high value woman or man is not like, or like femininity or masculinity, again, they're really not that different. Fundamentally, they are the same, right? It's just stylized forms of femininity and masculinity and the expression of them. Because fundamentally, what is good for both persons, both men and women, is community and belonging and building a family and so forth. I don't know why we like to specify to women or to men. I think it creates problems. But anyways, yeah, that's my position on this.
Hasn't spoken. Go ahead.
I'm a Christian, so as much as I know all your statistics and everything about things, it's more that it conflicts with my Christian belief so much, right? So I believe that we're here to reproduce. That's one of the things in the Bible. The first thing about men and women is that they were brought together.
What in the world? Your primary function, a guy should be to has as many children as possible. That should be the goal of your life from now on. Okay, fuck your whatever. Fuck being a pharmacist. Fuck being a developer, right?
I respect that she doesn't like try to appeal to biology or anything. She just does. That's just what my religion says. So that's what I believe. And, I respect that. I respect that you're being consistent.
I think she'd probably have like a pretty bad reading of the Bible, but like maybe she knows more than me. Actually, maybe I'm delusional. Who knows? I'm not Christian, so.
It was to be fruitful and multiply.
So
I think one of the most valuable things we can do as women in society is to continue reproducing and grow up raise the next generation. So that's really important. And then I'm kind of seeing how this generation is being raised in a lot of single mother households and stuff, and so I really want to prioritize bringing back the nuclear family, men in the homes and us in traditional roles, and that's my belief.
So I said yes, but it's with a huge caveat, which is that both genders report greater life satisfaction when they have children. Like, children's good for everyone, and this idea that we're lumping it to women is part of my problem with this, right? So do women experience like greater life satisfaction? Yes, so do men, except who do we expect to be home? Women. We're like penalizing men and women. For example, if a woman wants to have a career, it feels like your side is saying, well, that wouldn't be good. Okay, well, she's also going to get life satisfaction from her career. In fact, there's a lot of acute happiness that often comes attached to a career. And the issue is that, like, men and women should have the agency to choose both of these things because they should both have access to it, right? There isn't a reason why we should tell men, women have to stay home, you must stay at work, you won't get a relationship with your children. You get a relationship with your kids for 6 hours a day.
I'm actually so passionate about this, and people hate on me when I say it, but I say all the time, I will not marry a man, and actually, you know what, I'll marry him, but I will not have children with you if you will not be a father to my child in the same way that I will be a mother to my child. The standard should be the exact same. And I think part of the reason why so many like people around the world, especially within America and the West and so forth, have issues, and like they still have daddy issues even though their fathers are physically present, right? We see this all the time, like we have emotionally absent fathers. Like, this is the problem. It's the fact that people don't have strong relationships with their father, and they need to have a strong relationship with their father. Their father needs to be that primary caregiver. He shouldn't be this passive or secondary role, and typically they are. That's why people tend to prefer their mothers more. Your father should have nearly as equal as a role of the mother, or at least as much as he can be, right? And that's my position on it. And I think if I was married and my husband couldn't, like, at least for the first year, be home with me because he's like financially free enough to do so, he couldn't be home with me as much as possible and help me raise the child. And if he's like, the older the child gets, like he's like taken like 9-12 hour work days away from the family, yeah, no way I'm having children with you. You should be present in my
Wait, I have a
child's life.
question.
Yeah.
Is that your preference, or do you think that that's how families ought to be? Not like in a moral sense, but do you think like broadly, families should be structured that way, or is it just like a personal preference?
In an ideal scenario, yes, I think it should be structured that way, but obviously, like, we have to consider like context in people's situations.
Yeah.
Because of like, you know, the economy right now and so forth. Most people aren't capable of doing that. Like, usually both parents actually have to work, not even just the father, but usually both parents have to leave home, and they can't watch after their children.
Wait, quick follow-up question. And after I'm not like, obviously, okay. If like do you feel like if the mother or the father, I guess, I don't want to like equivocate on the word equal, but if like a father's better at something and the woman's better, the mother's better at something else, don't you think that in order to like make sure they maximize the amount of good they can have in their family, then the man should spend more time doing what he's good at, and the mother should spend more time doing what she's good at?
I agree with that until it comes to parenting, because I think if you have a fundamental issue, like an area where you're lacking in when it comes to parenting and you just rely on the other parent, I think that's generally fine, but as a parent you should work towards, you know, improving in that area. So like, let's say for example, like the father's not as nurturing, I don't think that's like you should be okay with lacking
An
in that
excuse.
respect.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
makes sense.
it's okay if like, okay, we have the mother's nurturing and you're working on it and you're taking the steps to work towards that, okay, fine. But it's like, if you're just like actively neglecting it, you don't think that you need to be a nurturer to your child and you don't need to be emotionally present, yeah, no, I think that's wrong. I think when it comes to something like parenting, you both should do that. Now, if it's the case that, like, you know, let's say the father brings in a lot of money and like the wife isn't really like doing much, she's not bringing in that much, there's really no like purpose for her to be doing that other than maybe it potentially makes her happy, then yeah, I agree, it would probably be more productive for her to be at home. But again, this is dependent on people's like situations, and that's just based on the dynamic. As a parent, you should be putting in like the same amount of work and effort.
Yeah, I especially agree they shouldn't just use that as an excuse to not get better, or to not like try to, whatever the weakness, they should just like work on it after eventually get good at it and after like solve it. Like if you start a relationship and you can't cook, if you just say, okay, the woman's gonna cook every single time, you're never gonna get better at cooking, and therefore it's just gonna stay that way. Where if you like at least put in effort, right? You don't need to take like a cooking class, but you start cooking like basic meals, and after over time you get better at cooking. Then when you have children, they'll already be solved, and you can be able to cook equivalent to like the wife and stuff like that. Cooking is like a different
Yeah.
thing, but I guess like just in general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, 100%.
I don't think that that's better, right? Speaking of the capitalism, I think if you look at models that have like 32-hour work weeks, you have greater happiness amongst men, women, and children because both parents are home with their children. And frankly, if a woman wants to not have a child, that's fine. That's her prerogative to do, right? You can still have great life satisfaction and happiness from not having a child.
I just want to say one thing,
I,
because she
I
brought up
really, really
capitalism.
like how Kyla, she focuses on the outcome. Whenever she has any debate, she focuses on the outcome. That's consequentialist, which I guess some people might disagree with, but that's why I like that she focuses. She focuses on stats of the outcome. People are more happier the 32-hour weeks, regardless if they have children or not, right? That's why I really like herself debating. I think it's really efficient.
The nuclear family unit, I love the idea. Honestly, my dad was a stay-at-home dad for a while, then my mom was. They like switched on and off a little bit, which I loved having my dad at home. I thought it was dope. And I think it would be awesome if we could have a parent in the household, but the reality is feminism didn't stop that. It was capitalism. 1950s nuclear family unit existed because we were taxing the rich at 90%. We don't tax them anymore. Amazon and Tesla, they paid $0 in taxes. So I wish you could all be your trad wives that you want to be. I just don't know if your man will be able to afford the house to put you in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to really focus on the capitalism part of it, because if you want to be able to have a woman at home with your kids, you have to be able to afford to do that. And a lot of people right now can't afford to, even if they want to. So before attacking feminism, we should be eating the rich. We should be attacking billionaires and taking back the tax money so that you can have your nuclear family unit.
I wanted to speak on this one. Could you repeat the prompt for me, please?
Bro, why is that this
No
turn to
career would give
anti-capitalism, bro? That's mage. I agreed until that.
women as much
She had me until
joy
freaking
and
capitalism, bro. But oh well, it's fine, I guess.
fulfillment as raising children.
Okay. So I'm probably the oldest one here. Just turned 50 last month. So as a golden girl who has raised boys, I'm a boy mom who was a professional woman, and that cost me my marriage, thinking that the career was more important than the family. And so my position is from learning from the mistakes that I made to help younger women make decisions that they will be happy with when they're my age. And you brought up the word acute. There's nothing wrong with working. And I do want to say, we are not expecting the man exclusively works and the woman is exclusively home. Both of my parents worked and took time. You know, you work it out for your family with your husband. That's all that matters.
She
It
brought up
doesn't.
the nuclear family unit.
Nuclear family means mom, dad, sister, brother, or whatever it is. It doesn't mean only dad works and only mom is in the kitchen. Generations ago, mom may have side businesses, do other things, sew, bake, whatever it is. You do what's best for the family. All I'm saying, as a woman with lived experience, who has been an executive, who has had the big bonuses and all of that, I promise you, having a son that is a Marine, working with my ex-husband to raise two boys that we are very proud of, one that's going to the Air Force, nothing will give you that fulfillment than being a mother. I'm telling you now, the acute accomplishments are great, but legacy trumps everything.
Well, this is the important thing of like fourth wave feminism, especially, is we want women to have agency to choose.
Absolutely.
And if you want to choose raising your kids, that's awesome.
Yes.
And if you want to choose a career, that's fine.
Yes.
I want even women to choose choices that might be worse in the long run, because agency and choice is so, you want to talk about biblical. Okay, God gave us the ability to choose.
Right.
If you think that this is feminism is maximizing the capacity for women to choose, including what you might view as wrong, right?
This is such an amazing point because, for example, like Savannah Stone and like a lot of the anti-feminists keep focusing on, oh, women are less happier today and so forth. But what I want to say to that is, when we evaluate what is morally right or what rights people should have, we don't consider whether or not it, well, not to say that we don't consider it at all, but it's not the main determinant of what makes us, come to the conclusion that something is morally good or morally bad, right? Because what makes someone happy is, again, very subjective. Like, what if it makes, it made, what's his name, Dahmer, very happy to kill people, right? Jeffrey Dahmer. But that doesn't mean it's morally okay, or that it's right, or that, and so forth. So this isn't the main thing that we look at, although we can also consider it. Like, ethics isn't like, it's not limited to one thing. We can consider multiple variables, but what's fundamental here is that people have the right to something, not about what makes them happy. That's not how we determine whether or not something should be legalized or whether or not they should have the right to something or what is moral.
Because the problem is that if you limit women's ability to choose, all you do is you just make good behavior the necessity of survival. That's not noble. That's not anything that we strive for. Choice is fundamental to feminism because it means you get to choose good or bad. But if you're good because you just have to be, that isn't meaningful. So we want you guys to have kids. We want us to have kids. We just want...
Bars. If anyone has, played Skyrim, Parthenax, he says, is it better to be born good? Or sorry, no. Is it better to be born good or to be born of evil or something and learn to be good? I don't even fucking remember. I don't know why I'm quoting it, I can't remember. But she's right here. It's far better to be able to make those choices and be good for yourself rather than being forced into it.
Want women to be able to choose. And there's increasingly pressure to pressure women. We want to talk about the waging and earnings gap. The earning gap exists for two reasons. One of the biggest reasons is because women will choose professions and have plateau careers during motherhood. That's the main reason that women earn less. The second reason is because they tend to work less hours. Again, because typically they choose to stay home with children. And I'm not saying career is all of this stuff, but if you want to get comprehensive here and you want to talk about happiness and meaning and choice, what we're also doing to women, which is saying, you get to choose a career, but you're kind of a bad woman if you choose career over your children. We're not doing that to men. Men are choosing their careers over their children every day, because we've told men that their value is tied to the GDP output that they provide for their family. I think that's just as anti-biblical. When I talk about biblical, it's not the nuclear family that's biblical, it's intergenerational families and villages. And what we're telling men is, leave your kids, have nothing else, work every day of your life so that when you're 50 and retire, your kids don't know you and they resent you. That's what we're telling people to do right now. As a feminist, I'm saying, no, both should choose. Everyone should choose, including men and including women.
I would argue that men get satisfaction from providing. I think that is their ultimate instinct. And I'm not saying working themselves to death. I mean, unfortunately, I think the 40-hour work week is stupid. I think entrepreneurship is great for...
Oh my God, women also, evolutionarily provided for their offspring. Do you think they were just solely dependent on men? No, oftentimes they did try to seek out partners so that it was easier for them. But no, they also provided for themselves and their children as well.
For men, because they can decide kind of what to do with their time. But I think innately, and my husband can attest to this, men want to provide for their family, and women tend to like to nurture their family. They tend to like to be with the kids more. So that's why they're choosing more part-time jobs. They're choosing maybe running a business. They're choosing paying hobbies. That is why that they do that. And I would also argue that women are not being pressured to stay home. I think women are being pressured right now in society to choose career over family and over marriage.
Well, this is completely unrelated since we're not going to be ping-ponging back and forth now. For an example, so just so you guys know, I was raised in a very traditional Christian religion. I was raised Mormon, and from the age of birth until 18 years old, I was told that the thing that was going to make me the very happiest was having a family. That is something that is told to you in these kind of patriarchal religions, is that the thing that is going to fulfill you is having a family, the thing that is going to fulfill you is taking care of a man's needs, the thing that is going to fulfill you is having a husband. And the reality is, every person on the planet has some general idea about what's going to make them happy. And I refuse to believe that having children is going to be the ultimate goal for every woman on this planet or every man on this planet. And I think that the idea of putting people into small boxes and saying, women are women, therefore the thing that's going to make you happiest is popping a baby out of your baby hole, I think is dangerous. Because I was raised in a culture that told me that what was going to make me happiest was having a baby and popping it out of my baby hole. This last summer, I went to a Mormon event, which is kind of unusual for me because I've been out of the church for a really long time now. And I was having a conversation with a woman who she'd gotten married when she was 20, had done everything traditional. She was a trad wife, had her kids, her husband worked, she stayed at home. We're having a conversation, and our kids are jumping on the tram together, and she looks over at me, and she's like, don't you just hate our children? And I was like, excuse me, what? She's like, oh yeah, my sister and I talk about all the time how awful being a mom is. Don't you just hate it? I don't hate being a mom. You know why I don't hate being a mom? Because I chose to be a mother. Because the first time I had children, I was 30 years old. The first time I had a child, and I'm proud to be a mom. I'm proud of everyone who chooses to be a mom. I don't want everyone to choose that, but this woman who I was talking to had a hatred of motherhood. And her hatred of motherhood came from a place where she wasn't given another choice. The reason why she resented what her life had become was because she had been told from birth that the only thing she was to become was to be a mother. Not me. I was whatever I wanted to be, and I chose to be a mom because that was a joy that I chose for myself. But I want you to know that I find children to be joyful, but not everyone does. And teaching every woman or every man that what's going to fulfill them in their life is children, I actually think is harmful. Because what happens when it turns out you have a kid and that doesn't fulfill you? Well, then you're a mom hanging out with me, watching our kids jump on a trampoline, thinking to yourself, I really hate being a mother. And I would like to avoid that because I think that there is joy in children. I think there is joy in that. But it's not for everyone, and I don't want to teach every woman or every man that that's how we should be.
The same could be said about feminism, right? So like kind of what she was saying, I almost lost my marriage from prioritizing a career. And I had gained very masculine traits. Like I wasn't serving my family. I wasn't paying attention to my family's needs. I wasn't prioritizing having a
So you think not prioritizing your family is a masculine need? Thank you for proving my point. I mean, masculine traits.
a child. I'm going now into my 30s and finally at a position where I'm like, I'm all in to serve my home the past year. So I wasted all this time chasing after career and once again almost ended up a divorced woman.
But that has nothing to do with feminism, right? Because feminism allowed her the opportunity to have a career and the opportunity to have a child, and she chose what was best for her, and she may feel that that's what ended her marriage, but I don't believe that that's what ended her marriage because her husband was involved in that too. There were two people in your marriage. You know, he could have probably been involved. If he felt that that was a problem, then maybe that's a conversation that could have been worked out. But I don't believe feminism is why your marriage ended. I don't believe that for 1 second. You're allowed to have kids in feminism. You're allowed to raise a family in feminism. You're allowed to. Of course you are.
But
I have kids.
It's like it's about children, it's about serving others. It's about serving your home. Feminism is very it's me. It's about prioritizing my needs, my happiness, right?
No, that's capitalism. And I don't necessarily hate capitalism, but I think the structure of capitalism that we have in America right now is a bit detrimental because we're so individualistic and we need community, we need villages and so forth. Like that's very good for us. But this whole we're so self-serving, blah blah blah, we're only concerned with ourselves. This is capitalism, this is not feminism.
It's about going and getting things done that will fulfill me, like a job and a career.
I was just wondering, like you're saying feminism pushed me to get a job, right? Like, or do you think it might be more the system that we have?
Yes.
We need money to survive.
Right.
I think that pushed you more to getting a job than having equal rights.
Did you need to get the job?
No, I don't need to go
I don't want to
college
interrogate your
degree.
guys' lives. Like, you guys get to make the choices that you guys want to make. The problem is when you take your story and you tell other people that that has to be their story, right? So when you say, I regret it because that's fine. That's fine that that's your story. What do you guys think is the one regret of men who are dying in hospice?
Not spending enough time with their children.
Why don't they?
Because they sacrifice.
Because they're expected to provide. Men
So
don't
if
innately.
both are staying home, though, who's going to provide?
But the
It's not
issue is
like-
that both can provide. That's what almost all families are doing.
So if both of them are gone, then daycare is raising the children.
Well, that's an unfortunate issue that we could go back to capitalism. We can.
Yep. Thank you, Kyla. This is an issue of capitalism because if we were talking about villages, what we do back home and what we still do in America here, because we have that community, is we, like for example, we keep our parents with us and we keep our elders with us. And we keep our family close by because let's say one day me and my husband both have to be out of the home. Rather than giving our child to someone random that we don't know and we don't trust, we give it to someone that we do trust. We give it to a family member. We give it to our grandmas or our own mom or our sisters or whatever it may be.
And talk about issues as far as like providing UBI or providing free healthcare or allowing villages to raise children. I'm with you on these things. But the idea is what you're trying to do is saying men must provide, and you are dooming men and women to the same lives that they have reported saying, I'm miserable. So many women, for example, do you guys know about the gray divorce rates? So divorce rates amongst boomer parents is exploding. because all those women and men stayed in a marriage because they had to raise their kids. And what you see is high levels of regret, particularly from the women. What I want is a world where people get to understand that they can just sort the relationship any way they want. If the man thinks it's better for him to be out 60% of the time and she's home for the rest of the time, that's fine if they want to make that choice. The problem is you're prescribing it to men, and I'm not going to do that. You're prescribing it to women. I'm not going to do that.
What did I prescribe?
You're telling them that a man should be a provider and that a woman should be a
I know, I
nurturer.
said that they get innate fulfillment from that.
It's a prescription. It's saying it's fundamental to who you are.
But so what is your solution? Because if the man's not providing and the woman's not providing,
yeah,
who's gonna
do you want to? We can talk about economics if you want to.
We're not going to talk about it right now.
And the next prompt is, the sexual revolution has devalued women and made them infinitely less happy. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, maybe. Okay. Whoever feels strongly about it can speak.
I think that this term, calling it a sexual revolution, is quite strange and it distorts history. If you look at the history of like the way.
Yeah, I agree with this. Like, what the sexual revolution was doing was, like, at least in respect of women, was normalizing the fact that women do want to have sex, and normalizing their sexuality and their desires, and not making it something demonized or framed as something inherently sinful and so forth. When we talk about the sexual revolution, it's not saying, oh, do it with whoever you want. It's about saying you can have sex with someone, and that's fine and that's normal. But anyways, I'm gonna let them continue.
That people engaged in sex, it really has not quite changed much. The only thing that we've seen change for the most part is the rise in social media and the rise of seeking out sexual relationships through that. Because you can go back through history and look at like the Greeks and the Romans that were very openly sexual. People were having sex in public. Like, it was not a private thing. It never was. And it really only became like this private thing when you look at like the rise of like industrialism in the United States, and you see sex become like commodified, and it became like a dirty thing, with also the rise of, you know, like religion and Protestantism in the US also kind of demonized it, and it became a weapon used against women. And I think that we've seen the pendulum go from like being hypersexual in the past, where sex wasn't like a commodified thing, or it wasn't a demonized thing, to kind of going through this period of like demonizing people.
I think she misunderstands a bit. Also, is Haji still here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Oh,
here.
okay.
I just don't have much.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
you're good. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I don't really know much about these subjects. Yeah, these specific points. I mean.
But what I wanted to add on to this is, I think this girl here kind of has a misunderstanding of history. When it comes to the Greeks and the Romans and so forth, I'm going to speak particularly in terms of the Greeks right now. They did definitely demonize sexuality for women. It wasn't like this hypersexual society where it was normalized for women to express themselves, right? It really wasn't. Women were portrayed by the Greeks and ancient Greek philosophers as these excessively sexual creatures that needed to be controlled, and they needed to kind of be suppressed, essentially. And that they were just, you know, I forgot which philosopher said this, but they said something along the lines of like, they're kind of just like a warm womb, or like a warm sack of meat, and that's all they are. So this idea that the Greeks were like accepting of this is kind of disingenuous. And then also is a lot of the Romans and a lot of the Greek philosophers at that time, or back then, they didn't view sexuality in the way that you're framing it. To the philosophers, uncontrolled impulse and just engaging how you want and being excessively sexual was viewed as very hedonistic. It was viewed as something negative. It was viewed as something immoral, even if some of them weren't religious, right? So definitely there was some sense of like, and I would arguably call it sexual degeneracy. At that time there was some sense of that, but it wasn't something that at least people who were philosophers agreed with or were okay with.
People for exploring their sexuality or things like that. And now we've kind of come back out the other side, where some people abuse it, some people don't. And I think that you have to have moderation. I've said this before, like, as far as devaluing women, I think that the problem with devaluing women who are open about their sexuality or commodify their own sexuality and take control over it is a problem with patriarchy, and I think it's a problem with misogyny. I don't think it's a feminism problem.
Well, I would say that when you, like, put yourself out there to be overtly sexual, and you don't give men anything to work for, so you lessen your value. So if you want...
I think this is so funny. So you think it's a problem that it's lessening your value, so you're feeding into this objectification of women. You think it's a problem that it's lessening your value. Not that it's a problem that, you know, it's conditioning society in a way and it's harming both men and women to present themselves in such a way or engage in very hedonistic relationships, right? Meaningless relationships. No, this isn't the problem. That's not the problem. It's because you're making yourself less valuable to men. Holy shit.
Women to be valuable than having a lot of sex with men, being just out there not caring about how you present yourself, that is not going to make you happy. You're actually sadder now. You're not happy.
I mean, I agree with that, but I don't think it's specific to women. I think it's both men and women. They ought to have discipline when it comes to sexual relations and their impulse and so forth. We're not animals. We are capable of governing ourselves, although people try to frame it as if we're not. I think you should be very selective with the people that you engage with, and I think you should be very careful about it. I don't agree with hookup culture. I don't agree with people, you know, going out and doing whatever, but I do understand that, for example, we are sexual beings, right? We want to have, we're also very social. We want to have deep, intimate relationships, and we want to express that sexually. And so it's very normal that the older you get, whether you're a man or a woman, the more likely you're going to want to explore that, the more likely you're going to have experience with that, and that's okay. What the sexual revolution is saying, and what a lot of feminists are saying, or what they should be saying, at least in my experience, what most of them say, is that there's nothing wrong with having that experience in of itself, right? So like let's say I was married before, right? And you know, I was intimate with my husband, and then I got divorced. There's nothing wrong with the fact that I was intimate with my husband. Or for example, let's say like some people, like they're in high school, right? And they make a mistake, or like they're in college and they make a mistake and they, you know, just do it one time or two times with someone, right? Things happen, right? Like this doesn't devalue you as a person, but the lack of control over your impulse is what I would personally say is what devalues you. It's not the act in of itself, because when you say it's the act in of itself, now you're demonizing something that's completely natural, that's beautiful, and that's very good when it's, you know, within restraint and within its quarters, you know. So yeah, I think the only issue is with people not controlling themselves and doing it in a disciplined way.
Happy, and I think that, you know, women tend, like all species, one thing we know is that we're here to be with each other. You can try to look at it like we're not equal. We provide equal value, and men can do things that women simply can't. You have, like, you.
Can I ask what? What can men do that we can't?
I mean, men build everything. We don't. Men protect us. They fight wars. We don't.
What do they protect us from? Other men?
No, women have always fought in wars. Women have built
obviously
so many
mixing up
things.
capacity and like history, right? Just because men do something, and like women have done stuff in the past, does not mean that women do not have the capacity to build, right? That's obviously ridiculous.
Very good point.
That has to be some sort of there has to be a name for that. I don't know what the name of it is, but
no. Also, like what is the relevance? What is the relevance of the sexual revolution of men being able to build?
Yeah, so many things.
But in the world, like the roads,
weren't allowed
the buildings, the architecture, men do all of that. Men are the geniuses. It's way more male geniuses than are female geniuses.
That doesn't answer the question, though. The question was, what can they do, not what have they done?
Well, she's answering the question a little bit, but you're saying like they're more men geniuses. They stopped us from reading. They stopped us from going to school.
Okay,
the first black woman lawyer wasn't
so
allowed to practice law. She got her law degree, but she wasn't allowed to even practice and be a lawyer. They stopped us.
But that's not what modern feminism is about. That we have surpassed that already. You guys can read, you guys can vote, you can do everything you want to do, and you keep making issues. This is why you always talking about the patriarchy and capitalism. You feed it, okay? Why do you?
I'll agree with this, but I don't think that the issue is within the ideology itself. Oftentimes, I think it's with the economic structure and the systematic and systemic structures that cause people to want more and more. So I watched a video one time, I forgot her name, but it should be in my video essays playlist, where she basically talks about how most civil rights movements or social movements, they often, like imagine a hill, right? Like they make a lot of progression, right? They go uphill and then they hit a peak and then they start to plateau and they start to go downhill. And usually around this peak, and around where the peak is and where they start to go downhill is when they start to, you know, ask for more excessive things. So take for example, like, not excessive, sorry. Take for example, like the LGBT movement, right? people were very accepting of the fact, not very accepting, but we made progression in terms of like giving people the right to marry who they want to marry, have same-sex relations, and so forth. And you know, even when it came to trans rights, they gave people the right to be able to get the medical treatments that they needed and so forth. But then some people, this is not my position, but some people feel like, for example, like they're taking it a step too far. Like they want them to have rights to be able to do this when they're underaged. Or for example, some people will say, oh, well, LGBT people want us to accept them too much. They want us to accept them in spaces with children and stuff like that and so forth. Again, this is not my position, but this is like the position of like probably like the average conservative and so forth. So a lot of social movements, they tend to hit like a peak and then they start to go downhill, but I don't think that that's because it's a fault in the social movement of itself. It's some deeper systemic issue or something to do with capitalism. I don't know what it is, honestly. Like, it's something I've thought about for a long time, but they often start to regress for some reason, and that's like, there's something wrong going on there, right? But I agree with her in the sense that there are feminists, not to say all of them, but there are feminists who take it a step too far. Like, oh, we should have a matriarchy. Oh, we should be able to do it with whoever, and hookup culture is okay, and we can do OF, and there's nothing wrong with this. Like, that level of like extreme, excessive feminism, I think is a problem. And then that's where I think where you start to regress and you start to have people go like, what the fuck is this movement? And now they don't want to support it anymore.
Think that you are
Yeah,
a
I think people
feminist in
say
the
it's like a
first place.
pendulum, right? So if you go like too far, like after like a certain movement gets too much momentum, then they go too far. After, because people are like rational, right? Then they obviously push back against it after the pendulum goes back like the other direction. And that's why it tends to happen for most movements, I'd say, historically.
Yeah.
They wanted you to work. That's what they wanted you to do. They wanted two people in the household to work versus one, right? But you hate capitalism, but you serve it. You would rather serve capitalism than serve your man, the man that was put here to protect you.
Yeah, but does your man make enough money so that you don't have to work? This is my thing. These are, if we're talking about family units, these are two people. They get to decide what happens in their unit. And reality is some men are not going to be able to provide all that they can. Talk about pressure. I feel like feminism was good for men because it kind of relieved them of a little bit of pressure.
It lifted everybody up.
Well, yeah,
It
but
really
it's
did.
made men so much more depressed than ever. It's made them weaker.
I think they.
Oh my god, I talked about this in the video on Savannah. I wish I posted it. I wish it didn't get corrupted. But like, she seems to like, how the fuck are you? Sorry, I keep cussing. How are you isolating this variable to feminism in itself? Like, people could be depressed for any various reason, right? Like, there's so many reasons that like therapists and psychologists are trying to like understand why are people more depressed, why are they more suicidal today, right? To limit it to feminism is just so reductionist. Like, when you do this just for the sake of like propagating like your narrative and like serving some kind of strategic interest when it comes to like your party and so forth, what you're doing right now is harming men even more, because you're not actually addressing the issue. You're not being sincere and wanting to understand, why are men more depressed? Why are women more depressed? Why are we collectively as a society more unhappy? You're not actually interested in fixing the problem of depression of itself. You're using it as a scapegoat to justify your argument. Because if you actually cared about depression in of itself, you would look at the various other factors that contribute to it rather than limiting it to feminism. And again, I don't know how she's isolating this variable.
I just don't like the fact that now they see, oh, women can be as good as us, because now that we're allowed to have all these rights, we're
Why do you have to be as good as men? Why do you have to be?
Because we live in their world. And I'm saying because we live in this world with them where they are suppressing us, their bar is up here. If our bar gets lifted, so does theirs. Our bar gets lifted, so does theirs.
Why do women need to be less than men?
Yeah.
Women are not less than men. They're different from men. We provide equal value, but we're different. You can't, it's no way that if you got a man.
This is what's inconsistent, is within philosophy, typically when we say that, and at least within our legal system, when we say that both people have the same intrinsic value, then you're implying personhood, right? And if both people have personhood, then they ought to have the same fundamental rights. Like,
And that's your age, your height, whatever. He's going and you race him. You're not going to beat him. More times than not, they're going to dust you, which lets you know that you are not
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that women don't have a right to engage in sports or to race each other, right? What we do instead is we accommodate, right? We understand that there are these intrinsic inequalities and we accommodate for these populations. So, like, take for example, black populations were disenfranchised and disadvantaged because of slavery and so forth and their oppression. So, what we did is what's it called? The thing, what's it called?
Reparations?
And not just reparations, like when jobs
Affirmative
have to
action?
yeah, affirmative action. We do,
Oh, DEI?
yeah, DEI. Like we implement things like affirmative action, or we give them reparations, or we implement things like DEI to make it more equal, right? Because we understand that there's these intrinsic inequalities either within the system or within ourselves, or within our biology. And the same thing applies, for example, disabled people who are severely mentally or physically disabled and they can't take care of themselves or they can't work a job. We give them payments, we give them disability checks so that they're able to live and survive. This isn't inequality, we're just considering people's situations and so forth and accommodating for them. But it still remains the case that disabled people can go and work a job if they want to. It still remains the case that black people still have the same fundamental rights, and they ought to have the same fundamental rights. And the same thing applies to women. It's not the case that, oh, they can't go and race if they want to, or they can't go and participate in sports if they want to, because that would be unequal, right? They can still participate in them, we just accommodate for them. And instead we have gender segregated spaces, we have gender segregated sports, so that women are able to perform in a space that's equal.
Equal to them.
In what sport?
Not in that way. You're not equal. They're stronger. They have more logic. You're more emotional. It's just.
To speak to the emotions, if I could maybe chime in here, right? The idea that like men are less emotional than women. It's like, well, what's the number one cause of crime? Do you guys know like the actual preceding factors?
Poverty.
It's actually impulsivity, right? ADHD is one of the largest things that is in prison, right? ADHD, impulsivity, right? And drinking, right? Men are highly addictive. They're suiciding at a higher rate than women are. The idea that men aren't emotional is again the type of prescriptive perpetuation that is bad for men.
Anger is an emotion.
That's bad for men and it's bad for women. Men are emotional, right? Women are emotional in different ways. You're right. If you talk
Low-key, Kyla kind of won me back after that abortion, because I didn't really like her arguments in that debate, but she's kind of winning me back in this video.
to, for example, a trans woman who's gone on
Yeah, she's not really good at like analytical. She's more good at like continental
Yeah,
philosophy, I guess. So.
Yeah, she has a lot of the same, like she argues in a very similar way as me, although it's not the same.
For example, a lot
Which
of
is why
emotions.
I literally said that the day that I sent you the video of the Kyla abortion debate. No, I swear, I can check the messages.
No,
bro.
you
I
did,
swear
you did, but
yeah, bro.
I just didn't feel like it at the time because she was just appealing to certain things in biology that I didn't necessarily agree with. But she's obviously still a good debater, and she's very educated. I didn't doubt that, but it's just I didn't like how she was arguing for abortion. But perhaps I just didn't understand her position entirely.
Begin to emerge, more specifically like sadness. The issue is that we all act like logic devoid of emotion is wisdom, but that there's not even a historical precedent for this. If you look back to like some of the original writers of wisdom, you talk about the Spartans or the Athenians, they loved their feelings. The Spartan men were so passionate about one another and the things that they fought for that they openly sobbed. That's what original Stoicism is. It's an acknowledgement of the feelings and a drive for action and through it. You take away a rat's ability to feel emotion, it starves to death in like a week because emotion drives all of us. Men aren't more or less emotional. We're all emotional. The issue is that, yeah, they have testosterone. They're always going to lift things heavier than I am. That's why they're disproportionately represented in labor fields. But the issue is that A, technology has balanced those things, and B, the idea that men are just better, men just, by and large, because of X and Y, have a little bit more dimorphism at the ends. They might like perform really high here. They're also disproportionately represented in some of the most disabled individuals, some of the most addicted individuals, some of the most homeless individuals, right? And so this idea that we're like putting like women below men because like we tend to be kind of, I would argue, more balanced creatures, I think is disserving both of us.
I don't think that's
But
what
we're not
she said.
putting it.
That's
We're
not
not
what she
putting
said.
women under men.
Yeah, we always, like, I was talking about this earlier, we're always constantly, like, obsessing over this hierarchy on, I hear it
I just want to say she articulated that perfectly. I probably would have said the same.
from feminists a lot, where it's like, oh, well, men aren't better, like, you know, women are under, like, the book, The Second Sex. Like, this hasn't come from women who were happy being mothers and anti-feminists, anti-suffragettes. They're not saying that. It's always the feminists that are saying this. So I'm just like, why are y'all so obsessed with trying to be men? Like, why can't you just be good women and enjoy the roles that we're supposed to play, which is mother, a mother, because a man can't fill the mother role. That's why. So I just don't understand what the problem
Okay, and women can't fill the father role. Like, what is your point?
is and why you guys are trying to be men.
Wait, is that the only role?
We're not trying to be men.
Wait, no, is that the only role we play though, as mom? That's it?
No, I just threw a role, like, you know what I mean? I just threw a role out there that man cannot fill.
I think I'm the most masculine one here. I'm not trying to be a man. I'm just more questioning like what is being a woman? Like what is that gonna look like for me? And it's not that I think that I'm better than men, it's just like even just saying like men are more logical. It's like I think men have been taught that their emotions are logic. Then it's not that they're more logical, they're not better decision makers, they're not the ones running our households. It's women that are running the households, you know?
I would
Yeah, that's why households
Do
are more
you see households that are led by women and versus single households that are led by men? Men do a better job raising children by themselves.
You don't get to
Single households led by women are creating YNs that are in the Black community. Women.
Oh my god, what? Where's she even getting this from? I've never heard a statistic like that. And if that's the case, it's probably because women struggle to like manage themselves financially, because typically, you know, most of these women who end up being single, like they were probably like stay-at-home wives, like they didn't have their own jobs and so forth. And so like they're divorced and then they're thrusted into the work field, something that they have no experience with.
Women do that, okay? Men provide structure. They provide discipline. And that's within the woman too.
So men sound like great mothers.
Is anyone on this side passionate about this particular prompt and would like to speak on it?
I did. I wanted to say something with respect to the lesbian because I can't identify. But I think the flaw with feminism is the expectation that we are supposed to be the same at all. I think we understand and we appreciate we are not better or worse. We are not equal. We are equal valued, but we're very different. And I think there's a natural biology that often gets overlooked, especially if you've raised boys, you will see from the womb, they are just different. And I think when we try to put them together and say, anything you can do, I can do better, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And you made a comment earlier about women are better in every way than men. And the question that I would have is,
I didn't say that.
I'm sorry, you said something
I didn't
about...
say anything close to that. I agree with you that I think the sexist, no, I honestly, the men versus women sex thing, I think it's silly. I think these traits, human traits are human traits. Some were nurtured more in this person, some were nurtured. Like my dad being a stay-at-home dad, he was much better mother than my mother was. I am so sorry, Mom, if you see this. But he just was. He was a better mom than she was. And sometimes that's the case. Forget the gender role stuff and like these are all human traits. You either are a gentle, nurturing, organized person who wants to take care of a kid or you're not. And that doesn't go man, woman, that goes person.
And I will say, not every woman is...
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's what I was saying earlier about how like fundamentally we aren't as different as we believe we are. Like we are far more similar than we are different, and for the differences that we do possess, they're in such small respects. Like even when it comes to like strength difference, the discrepancy in strength and the dimorphic features between men and women, where men are stronger than women, it only really matters in respect of like, for example, like if like between us individually, like if a man attacks me, I'm cooked, right? But like if a bear attacks me or a bear attacks a man, like there's really no difference. We're both cooked. Like but anyways, Jeffrey Miller, not Gopher Miller, I keep calling him Gopher. Jeffrey Miller talks about this in his book on evolutionary biology.
Mother. Not every woman should be a mother.
And not everyone, right.
But I would just say this, find me the society of women that are doing it by themselves.
I would love to see it.
Exactly, it doesn't exist.
Why though?
Because we are not able to sustain it. We live in a safe, civil society because the men have made an agreement amongst themselves.
Safe society? You think society is safe for women? You're so fucking funny, bro. Anyways, yeah, so there's no society in which, you know, man or woman is the only one who's contributing to society, and like they survive independently. We depend upon each other, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing, right? Society, communities, they're dependent upon each other the same way that a village, you know, like I depend on my family members when I need help with my children. That doesn't make me any less than, right? and it doesn't make them any more than me. We just depend upon each other. We need each other to survive. And that's okay. There have been indeed matriarchal societies where they are led by women. We have chieftains who led armies and tribes and so forth, especially within North Africa, right? Some Amazigh tribes were primarily like female-led. That's not to say, the issue with matriarchy is that when I say matriarchy, most people think of like patriarchy, but the way that matriarchy expresses itself is not as oppressive as patriarchy. So when we think of matriarchy, we compare it to something like patriarchy that's inherently oppressive, but matriarchy isn't typically like that. It tends to be a lot more egalitarian, even though there's women in, you know, more leadership positions than men. Or for example, we're matrilineal. But anyways, yeah, there's been matriarchal societies. I don't know what she's talking about, although they're not the dominant ones because of sexual dimorphism. But anyways, that is the end of the video. It's part 1 of it. I don't know if I'm gonna watch the second part. I don't know that I care to. There wasn't much substance in this beyond like Kyla and some of the other feminists, but primarily Kyla. But if we want to have like discussion in the comments, we can. Also, by the way, the comments are like kind of delayed. So if you guys say anything, I'll have to wait a moment. So I'll give you guys a moment if you want to say anything. But also, I kind of want to talk about the Epstein files. But like, I'm kind of scared. Like, what if I like end up dead and like... Like, Haji, have you been seeing like what's going on with like... Have you been seeing everything that's coming out?
Yeah, there's like 3.5 million files, I think. So, and they made it so you can't like control F and find stuff. So individual people are finding individual things after they're like releasing them. You kind of like manually read them, I guess. And yeah, the things are in there are disgusting, which is why even the most like staunch pro MAGA people are out there condemning Donald Trump now. I'm super, super curious on the stance of people like Ben Shapiro, who claim to hold to religious values, or people like Michael Knowles, or people like Matt Walsh. Like, just like these are just like daily white people, by the way. Like, I wonder what their stance is going to be. What if they're going to make up another excuse to still support Trump, or if they're going to say, okay, this is objectively immoral. There is no world, there is no possible world where you should be able to be a Christian or a Jewish person and support like whatever they're like what happened on the island. And there's also videos as well. It's not only like text pieces, also videos are also coming out as well. There's like an interview between him and somebody else where he said like ridiculous stuff as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's unprecedented and hopefully he gets impeached, I guess.
I definitely want to
And
like gather as many like of like the files and stuff as I can and information and like make a video on it or maybe do a live where we... Oh my god, I hate that these like walls are made of cardboard. Anyways, I want to be able to like go through the files maybe on live or like in a video. Like if it was a video, I'd have to like, you know, like edit it and everything, and it would take a lot longer. So maybe a live would be better. But like then I can't do it by myself because like I don't know too much about politics. That's like, by the way, guys.
It'll be
That's why I don't talk too much on like political issues or like policy issues. Like I just don't feel like I'm that well versed on it.
I think like the most surprising part about the files is finding out who's on it, because there's some people that are on it, people I would never imagined ever to be on it.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like the person with Saudi Arabia, apparently she said, she took like something that touched the Kaaba, and it's like millions of Muslims have touched this, and she sent it to the island. Or what is it like? People like royalty in the UAE, and also stuff happened in France as well. Finding out who is in the files, I think is like the most surprising thing ever. And do you know like Mehdi Hassan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently someone said Epstein a YouTube link to Mehdi Hassan's defense of Islam. It's super strange. Like whatever. Like what? Like I'll send you screenshots of like what I'm reading and like the Twitter posts and stuff like that. But it is mostly just like shocking, and the details are like you probably don't want to read that on live, to be honest.
Someone
I don't know what the
said-
YouTube policy is, but
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it on YouTube, maybe TikTok, but someone said there has to be something darker behind this because they wouldn't have released them without a plan. And I feel like this is made to make you believe something in particular and be controlled. I agree with this as well. They're definitely, first of all, we know that...
bruh, come
like,
on, bruh.
What?
I don't know. I feel like...
Wait, hold on, let me finish. First of
go
all,
ahead.
what we know is that, like, Jeffrey Epstein is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this. Like, we know that there's, like, far more, like, people who are like Jeffrey Epstein and they have far more power and they have far larger networks, right? This isn't just a thing in America, it's worldwide, right? Child trafficking has been a big issue for a long time. Like, we know, like, sometimes children are taken from America and imported to places like Latin America or Asia, like China and so forth, or Russia, right? Like, or even to the Middle East, right? It's not exclusive, right? So child trafficking rings are far more rampant, and Jeffrey Epstein is, again, just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this. There are more powerful people in America who are doing worse, who are engaging in worse, and they have far broader networks that go beyond just America, and there's people outside of America who are involved. And then also, the second thing that I want to say is that when I say, like, there's something darker beyond this, what I mean is, like, them giving us 3 million files is whatever, right? Like, there's definitely something strategic behind it. They're not that stupid. Obviously, they've been pretty incompetent in releasing these files, like, for example, accidentally, like, not actually redacting everything. However, like, there's obviously, like, a purpose behind this. Like, the specific files that they have released, they're definitely strategic. Like, the people that they're exposing, the images that they're exposing, there's for sure far more that they're hiding and that they're not releasing to us. And I feel like people still need to keep pressing them for the rest of the files. All of them. They need to release all of them at this point.
That can be the case. I don't know if there's more files to be released.
No, there
but
is.
like
The FBI said that they didn't release all of them because, for example, like, there's certain things involving victims or, like, violence or death or whatever it is, and they didn't release those things. But, like, that when they say things like that, that's just giving them some kind of leeway to, like, withhold more files. Like, I think there's definitely more to it. We know there is more. They haven't released them all.
Sure. Okay. I think, like, I don't know. I think this is just like an example of our, like, the American, like, the way that our government is structured, working, and the DOJ, having, or, like, the population being able to force the government to do specific things because obviously we vote for candidates. If Trump were not to release them at all, the fact that in the midterm soon, the Senate turns blue, we'd be able to impeach Donald Trump. So I think this is showing that democracy works. That's like my stance on it. Could there be something else? Yeah, probably. And I think that we should keep on. I don't think we should just, like, after they release it, now we're happy it's done. No, I think that we should keep on pressing. And I think with the evidence that we do have, I think we should go against the people that are found in the files. What is it? Person in Saudi Arabia, person UAE, Donald Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell. Is she dead now? I don't know what happened to Ghislaine Maxwell.
She's in jail.
Yeah, she's in jail. Yeah, and I think that she should be put in jail for, I guess, life or whatever, however life sentences she got. And I think she should keep on pressing, like, 100%. So I agree there. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's far more that, like, to this than we know of, and yeah, it's so fucking sickening, bro. I've been going through it for the past 24 hours, like, going through all the files and everything, and it just gets worse and worse the more that you look, the rabbit hole that you go down. Like, I found some crazy stuff on Reddit. I don't even know, bro. It's so bad. But yeah, I was just letting you guys know if you have any, like, if that's something you guys would want to see, then I can consider, like, maybe when I have some more free time, I can compile, like, as much evidence as I can, and we can go through it all live for anybody who doesn't, like, have access to these things or they don't know about them. But I would have to consider, like, guidelines and stuff like that. But we shall see. But I do have a YouTube video coming out soon, which is the Men Are Not Wallets and Women Are Not Prizes. It's based on my Substack article. So if you do want to, like, support me in other ways, you can subscribe to my Substack. You can subscribe to my, I don't really use TikTok anymore, but if you want to do that, you can. Or you can subscribe to my Instagram. I'm trying to think of what else. Substack, in my opinion, is better because I get most of the proceeds. TikTok and Instagram take, like, I think, like, 50% or up to 60%. If you want to, like, again, donate directly to me, I also, like, have buy me a coffee. And if you don't have those things, if you want to support me in other ways, like, or you just don't want to, just engaging is enough. Reposting my videos, commenting, liking, showing up for lives and stuff like that. I appreciate those things. But yeah, Raz, not the British accent, please. But anyways, yeah, I think that's all. I don't have much else to say unless Haji wants to add on to something.
Yeah, no, I think that was, again, I agree with you. I think that the debate did not reach full expectations. This isn't even Jubilee, though. What is this YouTube channel named?
It's ran by a woman. It's the Dr. Daff Show. God, my laptop is lagging so bad.
But yeah, like, I agree broadly. I think that Kyla actually has substance. She mentioned history. She mentioned like actual people rather than just making like specious claims like feminism this, feminism that, right? She was very, very specific. And I think that she dominated the debate as expected. The leftist Blondie, I think she's also really well spoken too. I haven't seen any of the other people. I don't know who the person, what was the name of the person you didn't like? What was her name?
Savannah Stone.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't know much about Savannah Stone, but I guess now, by based on first impression, she's not the brightest. um, not to hate, but yeah, yeah, I agree with your characterization, like the debate in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are we gonna
I
post
don't.
this? Wait, is this automatically gonna be posted on your YouTube,
Yeah,
like
it's
in
posted
the
under
live
my
section?
live stream. So if anyone wants to watch it, they can. So it
Yeah,
makes
watch it
my
back.
life
Yeah.
easier. But
After we might make clips, right, as well,
we could. Yeah.
possibly. Yeah. I think that'll be.
But okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna go eat, guys. Thank you for joining. Yeah, and make sure to follow my Instagram if you want to stay up to date with things. I also have like a Discord server. I'm having like issues with my account right now, but I will post the link. But yeah, I'm gonna get off. Thank you guys for joining, and thanks to Haji for joining with me.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, bye guys.